Order. If everyone could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so before we get started this evening, I want to give the audience a little bit of a layout of what we're doing here this evening. The first thing, though, that will be probably most important for you to know is that audience members will have two opportunities this evening to speak. One will be during the open forum that we're about to kick off. It's your usual open forum to speak about whatever topics that you would like. And then as part of our elementary reconfiguration discussion, toward the end of that discussion, I will again invite people to come up and to give us your thoughts with respect to the plans that have been put on the table for discussion this evening. So that's just a little bit of a heads up that that's how we will take a look at this today. So without further ado, I would like to kick off the open forum. We have 6 people signed up, beginning with Jennifer Wolf.
Diane, do you want me to go over my questions after this, or?
This is just open forum. It's time for the
Okay.
For the public to speak.
Okay.
Hi, Ms. Wolf. Could you just give your address, your name once again, and go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Wolf, 159 Hooper Street. Good evening. I have been very scared to share my perspective on a question that has been asked many times over the last year, but I've been afraid of retaliation towards my children and myself. Where have the students gone? To our administration and members of the school committee, please consider this an exit statement, since exit interviews are not conducted when a student leaves the district. My family is quote-unquote part of the problem. My daughter is a freshman enrolled in the Child Development CTE program at Portsmouth High School. My daughter came home from last year's 8th grade tour of THS and asked, "Mom, what are my options for high school? Because that is the unhappiest, most depressing building I've ever walked in." The teacher seemed really unhappy, and no one was excited to show us around. I asked her about the CTE offerings, and she replied, "They glazed over the programs. There was no time for questions." I've scoured my emails and have asked other parents if I missed the communications about a THS school tour CTE night for prospective students. I did not miss anything because one was not offered. Our experience at TMS was interesting, to say the least. Through her time at TMS, despite my numerous attempts to get her the help she needed academically or to address harassment directed at her from other students, I constantly felt she was brushed off. Instead, we saw more attempts made at keeping the students who clearly do not want to be there in a seat than focusing on those who actually want to be there. My daughter oftentimes felt unheard and unsupported. What made me realize the right decision was made in regard to her future was when an adult at TMS became snarky with my daughter's response to being asked what her plan for high school was. With a pang of sadness because she will not be graduating in maroon and gold, as I myself am a Tiverton Tiger, class of 2004, we began a search for a CTE program that would pave the way for her end goal, to become an elementary school teacher. With that said, thank you to the staff at Pecasset Elementary School between 2015 and 2020, who served as inspiration and motivation for her to want to pursue a career in education. She is currently thriving in her pathway and loves school again for the first time since May 13th, 2020, even though she is currently playing catch-up to her peers. I also have a second grader at Pecasset, and the possibility of him going to TMS come time for 4th grade makes me want to send him out of district as well. TMS is absolutely no place for a 4th grader. You can call it a learning academy, but it does not change the fact that that is an environment that is not conducive to or has the infrastructure to effectively meet the needs of our youngest learners. Lastly, after having spoken with parents, students, and educators, a common theme I'm finding is the absolute lowest morale amongst students and educators. I understand that the can has been kicked down the road since 2017-18 and has finally rusted and fallen apart. However, morale doesn't come from monetary tag. It comes from our educators feeling supported, valued, heard, and respected, and those qualities get passed on to our kids. Happy educators make happy learners, keeps those classroom seats full. Yes, money doesn't buy happiness, it makes things easier, but happiness and mutual respect can be found despite a budgetary constraint. And this, from my own personal perspective, is where the breakdown begins. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jackie Souza.
Good evening. I'm Jackie Souza, 1080 East Road. So I'm just going to read what an employee had put up on Facebook anonymously because they were in fear of retribution. Employees here, sad to have to post anonymously, yet the superintendent is vindictive. Very top-heavy decision-making, low morale among elementary educators. We have not been given a forum for input, and unsolicited input can get one in trouble. Their reputation tarnished by the superintendent and his buddies. Principals are not in the loop or even on the table. Most teachers are not at the table, only the superintendent's buddies. Division is his strategy, so no one has to look at the whole picture. That being said, school committee members have no reason to make a decision next week. In March, our school committee needs to cut district overall budget down deep at the low bottom line. Then direct school improvement teams at each school to spend March and April to recommend specific staff roles to lay off, which is by seniority, so it's rather simple, and gather input suggestions for a reconfiguration. Committee should spend their March and April getting input from Tiverton residents and employees who live with and care about the new plan. As an elected committee, they need to do more than just wait for Shannon to use her 3 minutes. This March and April, our school committee should be gathering public input or directing principals and school improvement teams, made up of parents and staff, to give input. By April, our school committee should get clear on what they're looking for in the new superintendent and narrow down the applicants. Then get community and staff who are not buddies with the old superintendent onto their screening committee and hire a new super. Current old ones need to go home ASAP. Candidates could actually be asked to use public input and bottom line budgets to propose plans as part of the screening process. New leader ideally could be announced in May, June, and make leadership decisions for his or our own district after reviewing the input gathered. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Christina Malloy.
Hi, good evening. I have some questions in regards to the bid that was placed out for the search committee. I don't know who wants to address the questions or how you would like me to proceed, but I will proceed with my questions. So I was able to get a copy of the bid, and as someone that worked in procurement, I had some questions that were raised on the bid. So on February 18th, in the proposed timeline of the bid, it states that the school committee will be interviewing firms. On the requirement, number one, from the school committee requires from the following selected search firms, it states that you'll be conducting interviews on the 18th. Can I ask why no interviews were conducted on the 18th?
We only had one bidder.
But you still stated in your bid that it was a requirement?
And we do plan to interview that firm.
Did you have the interview yet in front of the whole school?
No, we haven't had any interviews at all.
Okay. But it states in your bid as a requirement of the bidder, of the person proposing the bid, that they are going to meet with the school committee on the 18th. A representative from their company should have been at that, I don't know, special school committee meeting, that's what you called it, and there was no representative there to answer any type of questions. Per your bid guidelines,
Yes, understood.
you stated that.
That was our
That bid
requirement
guideline
of
was
them,
not met,
but
correct?
We were anticipating multiple bids. We only got one bid.
But that bid guideline that you set forth, number one, was not met, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. I also would like to question, why are we searching to find out what other services they offer, such as strategic planning and leadership coaching. If we can't even afford the $13,000, why are we trying to seek different services? Or find out what they're offering?
There is absolutely no plan to engage them for any additional services.
But your bid specifically states, provide a
Let
list
us
of
know the
additional
information.
services.
Right.
Why
It's
would
just-
you want to know a list of additional services?
Because it's always good to do your due diligence.
But we don't have the money to pay for the $13,000.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I have one final question.
Sure.
Who is the person that, submitted the, I know that it was Brandon that submitted it, but who developed the bid specs?
I worked with Brandon to develop it.
It was solely yourself, not a committee?
And it wasn't from scratch. I used a template from another community.
A template, okay, but it wasn't like a group collective on the bid, correct? It was just yourself?
I'm having a hard time hearing.
It was just yourself, it wasn't,
It was, yes, and I had that permission from our school committee to do that.
okay. All right, thank you very much. You have a great evening.
Thank you. Jessica Kudo?
Jessica Kudo, 157 William Barton Drive. I think it is very shameful and misleading to have a vote for school closure when 2 members of the school committee are not present due to illness. These 2 members should have had their opportunity to voice their ideas, concerns, and remarks. Whether or not they would agree with others is yet to be unknown. Their voice and vote were not heard. I suggest a recall on that vote take place. Place it back on the agenda for further discussions with all 5 members present. In regards to hiring a consultant to help with the search and hiring of a superintendent is absurd when there's already a substantial deficit present. I firmly believe the panel before me, along with the 5 schools' principals, presidents of PTOs, and teachers can create a subcommittee to review applicants for this position. With the variety of educational backgrounds and occupational experiences, I have faith and confidence that a selection can be made and save $12,000 to $15,000 of our looming deficit. In life, many would state that they don't like change. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? However, we may be faced with a change that we have no control over. With that being said, I believe communication and collaboration is essential. If or when reconfigurations of the grades in schools occur, I wish to see an opportunity for families and students to tour the schools during an open house. This would allow all to view their new educational environment, tour the facilities, meet with staff, etc. I believe this would help to alleviate a lot of anxiety and fear for children and families. This may help to facilitate acceptance of change. Lastly, last Thursday, there was a negative encounter that I had with one of the school committee members. At the end of the meeting, as parents were congregating in the hallway, this individual, in which I cannot name due to the rules, approached me and lashed out verbally her discontent with the way in which she and members of the school committee had been treated by the public. She continued to state that if people are not happy with who is on the school committee and helping to make decisions, then they should have ran. I was taken aback at her comments. I was confused why she was lashing out verbally at me. Which, by the way, I have never spoken to her in the past, and she doesn't even know who I am. While I will not go on and on about what was said, I will just say this. All members of the school committee must abide by the code of conduct and ethics. As an elected official, you must be respectful to your peers and those individuals with whom you work for. Under no circumstances should anyone be egocentric in their position. I do not condone harassment and bullying from either school committee members and parents. I promote collaboration and respect amongst all. Last Thursday, what occurred to me will be the last time this ever happens. Practice what you preach. We teach our children to not bully others. Whether you be a chairperson, vice chairperson, or school committee member, you drink the same water as we do. Learn to cooperate, collaborate, respect, and show compassion to those who elected you. Thank you.
Thank you. Riley Kilmer?
Riley Kilmer, 50 Tower Hill Road. So I have a couple things to address tonight. One concerning the budgetary issues, and then one, the proposed reorganization. Just with regards to the budget, just really frustrated. I know a lot of people are about how we really got to this point. Last year, there were a lot of teacher layoffs, but the budget deficit appears to be larger or at least the same as it was last year. Really want to know what is the plan for the long-term fix for these issues without decimating the entire district and eliminating learning opportunities that are crucial for students in our modern society. I'm a parent of 3 young children, so I'm certainly focused on the elementary schools, but I'm also very concerned about what classes and offerings will be provided at the middle and high schools should my children go to those schools. Overall, I really believe that we as parents are tired of this constant governing by crisis and need a consistent and comprehensive plan in order to determine what is best for our children. To give you a personal example from my own perspective, my son is a first grader at Ranger Elementary School, and his younger brother is in the process of matriculating into kindergarten. He's very frustrated and concerned and worried about going into kindergarten, but he is helped by the fact that he is supposed to be going to Ranger Elementary School with his older brother to help him through the process. So there's the possibility that that is not going to take place. That's a direct effect on my personal family. With regards to reorganization, I think a lot of people have said last year, the plan that was proposed last year initially, K through 1 at Ranger, 2 to 3 at Pecasset, and 4 to 5 at Tiverton Middle School, was determined to not be satisfactory to a lot of parents. And I implore you to consider multiple options rather than just the single one that was proposed last year. Some of the reasons that were brought up for the initial plan last year to be unsatisfactory is breaking up students every couple of years is really not conducive to their learning and stability. It creates a disjointed environment where children are not allowed to become comfortable in their environment before being shuffled off to another location. Secondly, transportation is a very large issue as well. If the schools were to be reorganized as it was proposed last year, there's the possibility for students with parents with multiple children to have to send their children to 3 different schools or more at the same time. Even if they're going to be using the bus, there's a possibility of how long those students' bus rides will be, or if you're going to need to engage with more buses, which would be an added cost to the district. So I really am imploring you to consider other options. Some of the things that I have thought of, I'm not an expert by any means, but the possibility of consolidating the Fort Barton classrooms into the existing classrooms at Ranger and Pecasset, and something along the lines of thinking about the use of temporary buildings as classrooms as necessary to facilitate that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Elaine Del Deo.
Hi, Elaine Del Deo, 73 Ablehart Lane. I've been a Tiverton teacher for 25 years. I'm currently at Fort Barton School, been there for 15 years, and I teach kindergarten. Thank you, school committee members, for listening to the restructuring options tonight. I heard you wanted teacher input, and so I thought I'd bring some light and love to the conversation tonight. So Fred Rogers once said, "Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping." While this quote is usually used in a tragedy, I just want you to know I'm here to help. So first things first, in order to rebuild, the public needs to know your goal. So we know your plan was to close Fort Barton, but we just need a goal moving forward. So for example, if your goal was to build trust and continuity, then you could take grades 1 through 4 and house them at Ranger and Pecasset, and preschool and kindergarten could be at Fort Barton in an early childhood educational setting. Parents would trust the early educators in their role as creating a nurturing early childhood environment. This would allow early intervention to thrive, and you could build a dynasty. You could attract young families. And any educator or administrator knows that kindergarten is always the exception to the rule, any rule. Grades 1 through 4 would build community and continuity in their respected neighborhood schools. No more looking at the lines. They'd all start in the same place. Again, you could build an empire just by starting here. That's one option. If your goal is to bring back the student population that we dearly lost and rebuild student numbers, then here's another option. Preschool through grades 2 could be housed at Picasset and Ranger, and grades 3 and 4 are combined at Fort Barton. We use the accolades of a 2-time winning Blue Ribbon School Award to attract families to come to Tiverton. The state and RIDE already know about the school, they know it well, and now every 3rd and 4th grader would be together getting ready for middle school and away from the early childhood scene. Every 3rd and 4th grader gets a chance to shine because opportunity is everything. If your goal is to save money, then here's another option. Keep all 3 elementary schools as is, pre-K to 4, and reduce staff. Look at the numbers at each grade and make cuts accordingly. So here's my explanation for that. So let's say you close Fort Barton and you realize, well, we have to keep it open because we have a bond on it. So you put a group of students there, and let's say you put preschool there. Well, you need a nurse for little Johnny when he gets sick. You need a custodian for when little Johnny throws up, or for when the toilets clog and overflow. You need a secretary to man the door for when little Johnny is getting picked up for a dentist appointment or arrives late. My point is, if your goal is to try to save money and you have to hire these people to use the building, then it's better off to just keep things status quo. We could go back and look at the budget together in order to close this gap. So part of the restructuring plan needs to include how you're using Fort Barton as an educational space. Does that make sense? Okay. One last thing. On another note, my daughter is the captain of the basketball team. Not sure if you heard, these girls have worked really, really hard. They placed number 2 for their Division 2. They're playing in the semifinals Thursday night at 8 o'clock at Portsmouth. And I just want you all to realize, let these girls be a reminder to all of us that we're all one team. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we do have a few items of business to cover before we get into the school discussion. So we will begin with item 3A, approve homeschool requests for the 2024-25 school year. Ms. Kraeger?
All set?
Yes.
Go ahead. Thank you, that's okay. I am requesting that the following student of a family be approved for homeschooling. The family has requested homeschooling for the remainder of the school year and has provided the district with the required paperwork for that. So again, I would just ask for the approval for this family.
Do I have a motion to approve the homeschool request?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
Thank you.
Policy, we have 3 second read policies this evening. Policy 1142, health and wellness. Policy 1143, which is the former health and wellness that we'll be removing. And then policy 333, spending plan transfer of funds authority. So we'll go in order. Do I have a motion to approve policy 1142, health and wellness?
I'll make that motion, but can you guys hear us? Is it really echoey? Are you okay? You're good? Okay. I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, unanimous, thank you. Policy 1143, the vote is to remove this policy. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. And then finally, Policy 333, Spending Plan Transfer of Funds Authority. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I just have a quick,
Yes.
Mr. Andrade, so you've reviewed this policy and you're fine moving forward, putting in whatever process you think you need to comply? Okay, great, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, all those in favor? We are unanimous, thank you. Okay, that was our, the business, if you will, that we intended to discuss this evening. Ms. Priestner, did you have a question? Do I have consensus from the committee to allow?
Yes.
Come on up.
Should we, Ben, should we recirculate that maybe then and have us come back? How would you?
Yes.
And
If the committee, if it's the will of the committee, yes.
So recirculate the form so that people can everybody can sign up, and then we'll have them come back
Yes.
up again? Okay.
okay, we'll give it a couple of moments.
Well, no, you can stay there. We're just,
You
if
can sign
anyone
it up.
else wants to sign up. Anyone else? Okay,
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Priestner.
thank you.
Okay. So thus far, we've heard, it's Tracy Priestner. I've been a teacher at Pecasset School, 3rd grade, for 27 years. We've heard 3 elementary reconfiguration options to address the closure of Fort Barton School. I'd like to propose an alternative plan that not only addresses Tiverton students, families, and taxpayers, but also brings significant benefits to our community. This plan will help us to deal with issues such as student retention and the subsequent loss of per-pupil student aid, while ensuring a brighter future for our children and a stronger community. After careful consideration, I suggest closing Tiverton Middle School as it's the school with the greatest need for renovation. Students in grades 6 through 8 would then be housed at Tiverton High School, which has a capacity of 825 students. This would create a co-located middle high school, and 5th grade students would then join the elementary students at Fort Barton School. A co-located middle high school would also help retain students at the high school level, as they'd already be familiar with that school, the staff, the course offerings, CTE options, and all of its other possibilities. Additionally, I would suggest the establishment of a LEAP program, which would then allow 8th grade students to start taking 9th grade classes, thus providing an opportunity for those students to graduate early with college credits. This program would be designed to challenge students academically while also providing the necessary support for their social and emotional development. Along with that, it would also retain our per-pupil budgeting from the state. This plan maintains educational continuity while prioritizing the well-being of students, families, staff, and the taxpayers who graciously voted to fund the construction of 3 elementary schools. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Tracy. Thank you. I just, because I couldn't quite hear, the 8th graders, a LEAP?
Other districts call it a LEAP program, LEAP,
Okay.
where those students in 8th grade are allowed to take 9th grade courses.
Gotcha, okay, thank you.
Lead to student retention.
Thank you.
Okay, last call? Okay, we're going to close the open forum. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I don't have anything to say, but I know the majority of you there, but I know there's a lot of us. Would you guys just do a quick introduction if you don't mind?
If we could, I would like, hold on a moment. When we began the meeting this evening, I did indicate that people would have 2 opportunities to speak, and that once we get into our established agenda, which is the next item, which is to discuss the reconfiguration options, I will absolutely introduce everyone. Thank you.
You'll have a second opportunity. Did you say you'll have a second opportunity?
Yes,
Great.
thank you. But to be clear, Ms. Riley, the second opportunity will be in line with this discussion over the plans, okay? All right. So as I've referenced a couple of times, this meeting is a little bit different than our normal meeting. We have with us this evening quite a large contingent. And first of all, I do want to thank everyone for their willingness to come up and join us this evening. One of the things we wanted to do first and foremost was to have a discussion with the educational experts in our community. Those people are here with us at the table. I will ask us to kind of go around and have everyone introduce themselves because they may not be known to you, and then we can begin this discussion. What we will do is we will go through a number of options that have been identified as possible configurations in a consolidation mode. We will talk about some of the pros and cons, and that is the purpose of having the panel here. Let's talk about, the ideas that are on the table, the pros, the cons, and the hope is that we can come to at least a place by the end of the evening where we can whittle it down to perhaps 2, that we can ask our administrators to come back with additional information on for further discussion at our meeting next week. So without further ado, if we could start from down at this end of the table, and if everyone could introduce themselves.
Joan Ruda, principal at Fort Barton Elementary School.
Good evening. Amy Donnelly Roach, principal at Pecasset Elementary.
Andrew Zatoli, principal of the middle school.
Sarah Kraeger, Assistant Superintendent for Student Services.
Brendan Andre, Director of Finance. Peter Sanchioni, Superintendent.
Jocelyn Sherman, School Committee.
Elaine Pavo, School Committee.
Ben Scungio, Attorney for the School Committee.
And I'm Diane Farnworth from the School Committee.
Kim Parkat, School Committee.
Deb Polish, School Committee.
Kristen Destremp, 6th grade math teacher and president of NEA Tiverton.
All set. Wendy Flynn, Council 94 President, Special Education TA at Fort Barton.
Donna Larson, Grade 4 Ranger.
Hallie Azevedo, Grade 2 Pecasset School.
Jen Curtis, teacher on special assignment.
Julie Simmons, first grade at Pecasset.
Thank you, everyone. So to kick things off, I've put together a very high-level listing of options, and this list came to me through various sources. First, I did reach out to every member of the school committee and ask them if they had any ideas to share, to please let me know, and they would make the list. We've also, and we didn't limit it to what a school committee member wanted, but I also said if you have parent ideas, constituent ideas that you would like to share with us as well, please do. We received a number of ideas. Some of those ideas were not consolidation-based. However, the ones that were consolidation-based have made our quote-unquote high-level list for discussion this evening. So to kick things off, we have, and everyone here has a copy of the list? Okay. So to kick things off, Mrs. Polish has agreed to scribe for us, if you will, a list of pros and cons for each of the options we discuss. And the idea will be for us to, take a look at the body of work at the end of the day and try to come to some kind of consensus on what the best option or options may be at this time. So to start things off, the first option, did you get one, Elaine? Okay. The first
Farnworth?
option,
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
These are also available on the stage if you need a point of reference if you don't already have one.
oh, they are, that's right.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, I'm going to give people a chance to. I didn't realize they were there, thank you. Is that right?
Running out.
I've already written on mine.
If we run out of copies, if people don't mind letting someone screenshot yours so that everyone can see.
Thank you, everyone. So what we have in front of us is a list that's numbered A, B, and C. And the first one would involve having pre-K through grade 4 to be placed at Pecasset and Ranger. So in essence, taking the current elementary footprint and bringing it down from 3 schools to 2. The options within that would be based upon either geography or grade level. And by geography, it's where you live in town and where the maps are drawn. The second option that we'll undertake is K through 4 to remain at Pecasset and Ranger with pre-K at Fort Barton. Again, the discussion will be, the options within here would be based upon either geography, where you live, or by grade level. Pre-K through grade 3, the third option, I apologize, option C. Pre-K through grade 3 to be placed at Pecasset and Ranger, with grade 4 moving to the middle school. Obviously, pre-K through 3, again, same as with the previous examples, would either be based upon geography or grade level, depending on how the conversation goes. And that, the assumption is that grade 4 would remain in an elementary model. We also had some additional suggestions beyond these primary thoughts. One would be to move the 8th grade to the high school if we were to decide to move the 4th grade to the middle school. One would be to utilize the grade 4 space, perhaps, if we don't go to the middle school with grade 4 for an adult learning program. And then, the overwhelming message that I received from parents especially was, let's try to keep the Fort Barton children together as much as possible within class sections for the first year to make the move a little easier. And that's, great, all great suggestions. And we can talk about those, although they are separate and apart from the primary discussion. So to kick things off, right from the top here, and these were not, I may have put these down on paper, but they're not in any particular order, so please don't read into anything there. Pre-K through grade 4 to be placed at Pecasset and Ranger. The first I'll kick it off with the pros.
So just so, because I'm trying to write them, what we're talking about now is simply, we have pre-K through 4 at one school, pre-K at 4 at the other school, and then there'll be district. Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So basically what we have now, okay.
Yep. Everyone else understand what that is? Okay. So, and we would have, we would have the option of handling it 2 ways, whether it be, through redistricting on the map or through having students in, places by grade level. I know we've heard a few suggestions to that end this evening. Starting with based on geography, which would be really redistricting, which has been, something we've done several times here in Tiverton over the years. I will kick it off with first of all, a pro for this, so that we can get this conversation starting. I will ask that if you would like to add anything, to please just, indicate to me that you'd like to speak, and I'll give you the floor, okay? So a pro to this type of a setup would be that the children would be in a familiar type of structure. They're in a pre-K through 4 arrangement today. They would be in a pre-K through 4 arrangement tomorrow. And again, I'm just kicking it off, and I'm hoping that this really and truly does become a discussion. So does anyone have anything they'd like to add? Ginny?
I just have a question.
Yes.
For this one, pre-K to grade 4, you're looking 16 classrooms. Does that mean that you'll be utilized, like the art music room would be utilized as a classroom?
That would definitely be, we would have to.
Because I know, like at Ranger, we have 12 classrooms. Then we have the art, so this would mean that the music art room would be used as a classroom, probably the library as well. Right, okay. So then I would like to say a con to that plan. To me, I think that the music and art teachers and their area deserve their own space. I believe that, no, thank you. Thank you. I think that's, first of all, it's professionally respectful. Secondly, children need to have a space where they are creative, and I think that would cause a great deal of difficulty for those teachers to move through the building on a cart. And also, if you're having art in the classroom or music in the classroom or health in the classroom teacher doesn't have that room to which to do their planning at that time. And also, again, children need to move in, children need a different space. They need to be out of their 4 walls. So that would be a con to that.
A con or 8?
A. One con, but one big one, one big con.
Thank you.
I broke it down to 3.
Yes. Ms. Kraeger?
I agree with your pro. Just in relation to cons, this does not allow for any special education classrooms. In addition to that, it does not allow for any OT, PT, speech and language, or calming areas for students.
Did you get that, Mrs. Polish?
I think so. So no special ed, OTC. So
No classrooms for special students who receive their services outside of the regular ed classroom.
Okay.
No space for speech, OT, PT,
Yep.
or a calming area for students who are dysregulated.
Yes, Kim?
I'm concerned with the classroom sizes. I think they would be way too overburdened, especially the teachers right now after last year. It seems like everyone's doing way too much, and they've lost a lot of time, their planning time. They've gained extra students, and I just think that would be an added challenge to the teachers that I just don't think is a good idea.
Great point.
Or the students either.
What was the rest of that, Kim? Classroom sizes and
Teacher overburden.
teacher overburden.
Yeah.
Do we have any other thoughts on this particular proposal? Pro or con?
Another con could possibly be the fact that with enrollment getting bigger, where would we put the students?
So no space to grow.
Right.
Want to put words in your mouth.
No, that's...
And I will, I did do the initial research on this, and we currently have 558 students that we would be looking to place. And so that what that results in is, you know, in the high 200s in each of our elementary schools, which is well beyond where they are today. And again, with the differences between them, does anyone have anything they would like to add if the approach were to be, with this K through 4, at a grade level as opposed to just even split? In other words, and I'm just going to throw this out there as a possibility, and I couldn't tell you if it would work or not. I was, you know, just doing math on the current enrollment numbers. You know, we could look at maybe pre-K at Pecasset along with 3 and 4, and do K through 2 at Ranger. Not saying it's a good idea, I just want it discussed. And Ms. Riley, we'll be inviting audience participation at the end. Thank you.
At the very end. K through.
Your microphone's not on, and we will be taking input at the end.
Okay, I was just curious if I think it would be helpful for everyone if, as we go through each option, can we reference exactly how much will be saved?
Tonight's discussion isn't really about the dollars, right? Let me be clear, and please remain respectful this evening, because that is what we are trying to do here. Tonight's discussion is about the students only. We have made this decision for monetary reasons.
Well, if it's about monetary,
Ms. Riley,
if it's about monetary, then why can't we discuss
you are
how
not
much will be
invited,
saved?
Ms. Riley, to participate right now. The public will be invited to participate as we wrap things up this evening. So thank you.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
When she's done.
Go ahead.
So,
no, I'm sorry. We're not taking public comment at this moment. We will later on in the conversation. Thank you.
So,
Diane,
Diane,
can we turn off that microphone, please?
Could we?
Respectfully, you can wait for us, please. Sir.
To at least participate in the discussion by option that you're reviewing, as opposed to taking input at the end. I mean, you guys are here to represent the best interests.
We are, and that's to represent the best interests of our entire town.
If it's helpful, I'll reread the pros and cons.
We'll
at the
revisit
end.
each one of them.
We'll revisit.
But let's get through this first part of the conversation, please.
So Diane, I'm sorry, could you give me your pre-K 3-4 Pecasset, K2 Fort Barton, no, K2 Ranger, and that was just an example.
Just an example.
Diane?
Yes, Celia.
May I ask my question?
Yes.
Before the genius continues? Julie, how many classrooms did you say are at Pecasset? Regular classrooms?
If you don't mind the
Just-
microphone, please.
Julie, your microphone.
Oh, sorry.
There are 10.
There are 10.
10. And so we have right now about 50 children in pre-K, so that would take up 2 classrooms. So that would leave us approximately 8 classrooms. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
So,
Madam Chair,
go ahead,
Yes.
Amy.
I believe we have 12 regular-sized classrooms, 2 kindergarten, 1 of each grade level. Right now, there is a room that is dedicated to students with special needs called our Pathways Space, which is a regular-sized classroom, as well as our Math Intervention Room. So I believe it is a total of 12. 2 are designed to be kindergartens, and 10 are standard, if you will, classrooms.
So then if there are 12, we would use 2 for pre-K approximately, because right now there are about 50 kids in pre-K. And that would give us 10 classrooms to use for whatever grades we decided to put there. Okay, thank you.
So,
yes.
On this, doing pre-K 3-4, K2 at, so pre-K 3-4 at Pecasset, K2 at Ranger, I think we heard it tonight, but one of the cons I wanted to bring up that a parent, actually several parents, who had emailed us is the continuity issue where you're at one school for pre-K, then you move for K through 2, then you move again for 3, 4, and then you move for 5. That several parents made the very valid point that our youngest children find that, most of them find that disruptive. And then, so that would be one con, is that, moving around like that is disruptive for our youngest children. And then the other con that I have heard, and I guess we could figure it out, but I have heard a lot of parents talk about the transportation issue of, I have to get one here and then I got to race over here. And so I do think that is certainly a challenge with this one. I will also give a pro, only because I remember hearing it from last year, and that is that all the teachers teaching that grade they're in the same building, so now you share planning versus being Ranger, So that is one of the pros for that is that sort of common building. And you guys jump in.
Could you please just keep the microphone? Yeah.
Yes, I will, even though I'm very loud. I polled all of our second grade teachers today, and we were all over the board on this. I mean, it was, no one had the same ideas, which means we need more information. I think we need a cost analysis on every single one of these. I also personally like Mrs. Daldeo's ideas, and I'd like to see those listed out on a paper like this, which is what you were just going with, Deb, about keeping our grade levels together. We do live in a small town. Both of my children were raised in this town, and when they went to Tiverton Middle School and took the bus, and we live in South Tiverton, it was never longer than 40 minutes to get home. So it's a small town. There are other towns. In fact, I believe the top 4 school systems in Rhode Island, I know Barrington, because I'm from Barrington, even though I live here now for over 20 years, they have their 4th and 5th together at Hampton Meadows, and then their other 2 schools, Soames and Primrose Hill, do their K through 3 together. So that's another, maybe visiting a school system that does that keeps grades together, or other school systems that may be doing that in Rhode Island, and finding out, because Rhode Island's so small, and a lot of our towns are small, so it would be nice to go and visit other school systems that are doing that kind of model and talk to them about the busing situation. And a lot of our parents also drive and pick up their children at schools. So, we need to analyze the buses as to how many kids are actually riding the buses to these regular community schools right now. I'm concerned a little bit about one of the options on here. It was on a different paper that I had before, where we were going to keep kids at Pecasset like basically the same, and then put all the Fort Barton kids with the Ranger kids, and I felt that wasn't a true community school model, only because our children at Pecasset, and I'm going to speak for them, and that's where my line in the sand is they would have a difficult time assimilating maybe later on with the other kids that had been brought up together. So that could be a con for me. That's all. Any questions?
So I'm hearing that we had this established list. However, we're having this discussion. A few other options have also been called out, and we should at least have a discussion about each.
That's what I was going to say, is maybe we can quickly go through the rest of this list, and then we can
go back and
go back to the other few.
Yep.
Okay.
We can do that. Yes.
Can I say something about
Yeah,
option
sure.
A? One more thing about option A. That would mean that it's a con, yes. That would mean that there would be more students at Picasset, and from what I understand, the drop-off and pickup is horrendous for parents that drive their kids to school. It's blocking up Main Road in both directions, and that parking lot is really not
Well,
designed
it's
to turn around.
definitely a congested part of town, for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
So, anything else for this sort of split grade that you guys can see that would be beneficial or not beneficial?
This list obviously would be, anything on this list would be better for my colleagues, because if we did also do, like Mrs. Deldeo had suggested, say we did preschool and kindergarten at one school, and then first and second in another school, and third and fourth at another school, that means everyone has to move around, basically, except for a few people. And so then we also need a cost analysis on who's doing the moving. Are we getting a moving company in the summer? And, are you going to expect teachers to take that time during the summer? So we have to also look at that and take into consideration my colleagues as well. And also the students foremost, but yeah, it's complicated.
So on B, I guess? Option B.
Okay. Thank you. All great input. Option B was kindergarten through grade 4 to be split between Picasset and Ranger, either by geography or grade level, with pre-K going to Fort Barton. Does anyone want to kick off the discussion on that one?
I have a con. Preschool right now the majority is, I believe, Sarah, special ed kids.
It's about half and half. We have students with special needs and then peer role models.
So they should be included. They wouldn't be included in that type of a model. They would just be preschool.
So it would be our 2 preschool programs at Fort Barton. We would keep the model the same, where it's peer role models with the special needs students.
But that's all they would have for peer role. I mean, they would be going to their specials with
It's
a group of
a
kids.
half-day program for both, so there are no specials. It's a 2.5-hour program where they're really receiving their special education services during that time. So their inclusion time is within that classroom setting.
Okay, just a quick question. Do you feel like that's a good idea, though, with inclusion? Preschool, they're supposed to be included.
I like that the 2 pre-K classes would be together. Right now, they are in 2 separate buildings. I like the idea of having them together so the pre-K teachers and teacher assistants can work with one another. I don't think that's a pro or con. We would make that work.
So what your con was no
Inclusion.
exposure to the other children?
Exactly, to peers, yes.
Are there any, I'm going to throw a con out there right now. If we were to have pre-K at Fort Barton, we would be required to have a nurse there. Would that be correct? So that kind of negates some, at least, of some of the cost efficiencies that we would have keeping them with other grades.
Okay.
Yes, Ginny?
I'm going to go back to my other con, because I'm thinking it's 15 classrooms, so you're going to lose the art and music room again.
Same.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the library. And then probably no room for special ed services as well.
Yes.
OTPT.
So if you're just removing pre-K from the buildings, which in essence that is, you don't see where the ability to consolidate the remaining grades is still a good situation. Okay.
Madam Chair, that opens up 2 classrooms, that's it.
I'm sorry?
Moving the pre-K only opens up 2 classroom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I say otherwise?
No, just so people are aware.
Okay, no, thank you.
So No specials, no movement, again, same as that first, okay.
We'd be moving our carts.
Thank you. Yeah, there'd be carts. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add on this particular proposal?
Just a question too, along the same lines of a nurse needing to be in the building. Would that not be the same for secretary or administration to have to be in the building? For pre-K at Fort Barton, we would need those services too, so the savings wouldn't be there.
I'd also like to add that, that the consideration of moving 8th grade to the high school should be one you take very seriously. I also like the LEAP program, and that frees up a little more space at the middle school, and also for the parents that are concerned about having 8th graders with 4th graders, if that were to come to fruition.
Yeah. Okay.
So right now,
go
we're
ahead.
just talking about kindergarten through grade 4 at Cassett and Ranger, just split, and then pre-K over at Fort Barton.
Okay. Are there any other comments on that option right now? No, okay. The next one on the table is pre-K through grade 3 to be placed between Pecasset and Ranger, and grade 4 moving to the middle school. Obviously, the pre-K through grade 3, if we look at it by district or geography, it would be the same discussion as with the other options. Same thing with the grade levels, right? It would be some sort of grade level configuration, and I really don't have anything to suggest in that respect. I'm going to leave it to the experts here on the table. Starting off with I'll kick it off with a pro for this. It does alleviate the space issues at the 2 remaining elementary schools. The 4th grade is 112-ish kids this year that are in the schools. And so it would alleviate some of the space concerns. And then I will go ahead and allow others to opine.
I have a con. Grade 4 in the middle school, they're babies. For lack of a better word, I'm sorry, I don't mean to downplay your children, but they're babies and they're in that environment. They're in that nurturing, loving environment. I worked in that for years at Pecasset, and they're nurtured by their teachers, and they're just loved on. There's more focus on them. I just feel sending them to the middle school is just not a good idea. I was reading there was studies done where there's all kinds, like students, they have an increase in disciplinary issues. They're too socially and emotionally immature to be in with other children of older ages. They suffer in areas of reading and math, and they have lower test scores. They have a decline in academic achievement and self-esteem. This also requires extra counseling and extra social emotional issues for all students. Those are my cons. You got those?
Thank you. I think those are all great. To the one parent that actually shared a lot of these studies with us as well, I thank you. I think we also, and I didn't give this enough clarification when I brought the topic through. My understanding is that should the grade 4 cohort be moved to the middle school, they would continue to follow an elementary model. They would continue to have the same teachers as they would have had today. And they would not be commingled, if you will, with older students.
Would you see that as a pro?
I would see that as just a fact.
Oh, okay.
Because I didn't say it from the get-go, and I certainly didn't put it in print, but I also don't want to, just gloss over the fact that that's, I think what the schools department is thinking of in that respect. So I'll leave it right there and allow others to continue.
Would they be taking the same buses and on the same schedule as the middle school or separate elementary schedule? Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I missed the answer to that.
Elementary, they would be on the elementary bus and then just dropped off?
I would actually like to discuss that one a little bit more too, should that become an option, because I honestly, I think there's a lot of savings to be had in our transportation if we, if we have the kids on the same bus together. But, go ahead.
I'm going to put it over there. As a fourth grade teacher, I put a lot of timing thought into this. We have a budget crisis. If we're to move to the middle school, I would like us to be at the same hours that the middle school operates. We would still operate in an elementary time frame, so we could still have that autonomy. But if we're on a separate schedule than the middle school itself, we would be isolated. There would be no sense of community. If we're in our own hallway, the same way that the fifth graders used to be in their own hallway, we would at least be in that same model, that we're elementary, that we're separated. Sorry, it's been a long day. But together, to be able to collaborate. We could share students, we could share materials, we could do a lot of creative things. Yes, is this the most optimal thing for us to do? No, but a budget crisis is a budget crisis. You have a budget, you have to figure it out. And if we were to go up there and operate under those parameters, on the buses, no different than the kindergartner sitting in the front, fourth grader sit in the front. There's a bus monitor on the bus to help alleviate that. And as we know from the middle school, there's plenty of parents who still pick up their children. We could make it work. We're not going to change who we are as fourth grade teachers. I've talked to other fourth grade teachers, and we could make this work if this is the direction that the district has to go in.
Thank you. Yes, Jenny?
I would like to say too, I taught fourth grade for 20 years, and sending the fourth graders to middle school terrifies me too. However, as Donna said, it's a budget crunch, and as Kim pointed out, classroom teachers nurture and love their children, no matter where they are. And so I feel confident that these fourth grade teachers are going to mama bear all over those kids. Yeah. So I think that they will be okay. And I think I am very confident that the fourth grade teachers are not going to just say, all right, take them. They're going to be totally involved in whatever plan there is to send those children to the middle school. And we've already had conversations with administration about some suggestions, and they've been heard, and they've been considered. And so I think that our fourth grade teachers are very strong women, if you've ever met them, and they will advocate quite strongly for the best interests of their children. So, and I think the administration will listen to that. So while it's not optimal, I think it may have to be done for a few years. But I also want to go back to what Donna said about schedules, also isolation. But then if you run the middle school fourth graders at a different schedule, at the elementary schedule, then you run into that problem again of having children at the middle school in fourth grade being let out the same time maybe another child at Picasset is being let out. So I mean, like a parent may have to run between two buildings. Yeah. So that could be a problem, transportation-wise. Also, if you run two different schedules, then you're going to have your nurses, your custodians, your secretaries, et cetera, on two different schedules. And again, it does create some isolation. So I think those would be cons.
Oops.
Yes.
You're in the building?
I am.
Did you walk it? What's it? What would that look like? If you could help me, yeah.
Well, fourth grade would be.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about the model, or how do you want me to?
Like, what would it look? I'm walking in.
If you walked in the building, the main door, you have that hallway facing you, where the fifth grade is currently.
Okay.
That could become fourth grade. At the end of that hallway, there's a brand-new bathroom.
Yes.
That would be a bathroom just for the 4th grade.
Okay.
On the opposite side of the building, because the building is a square if you've never been in the middle school, the opposite hallway, parallel to the 4th grade hallway, you could place 5th grade.
Okay.
You would need the back hallway near the gym. We would need to put a couple of science classrooms back there. Right, Mr. Zatoli? And then 6th, 7th, and 8th would be upstairs.
When we were on our tour,
Yep.
the library is available for what? Because we
Right.
closed down the libraries.
So it's open now.
So that could be 4th grade
Library.
art, music.
Well, yeah, because the co-curricular teachers will be going from the elementary to the middle school for 4th grade. So they will still have their art teacher, they will have their music teacher that they know, their librarian.
So that library would serve as that 4th grade, because it's not being used now, yes?
We use it, like teachers
Occasionally.
bring our kids in, we do.
But that would be used for the specials, if you will, for,
We have enough room for the specials, I think.
okay.
Mr. Zatoli?
Thank you.
I'm just trying to visualize.
I won't repeat what was said, but that was all accurate. I would just say this much. We have plenty of room in the middle school to house 4th graders. 4th and 5th would be on that bottom front. 4th grade, as we said, would be their own elementary schedule. So in essence, and I understand why parents are nervous, we're just taking them, putting them there with teachers that they're familiar with in the schedule that they would have had if this was not part of the movement. The other thing that I need to say to you, and this is going to be hard a little bit, but the foundation of our middle school here in Tiverton is nurturing and supportive environment for your kids. We're nurturing every day there. And if you talk to enough parents, and Mr. Keller, who's here tonight, we're at every recess, every lunch duty, every pickup, every drop-off, talking to parents every day about their children. It's what we do there, and I know that middle school has that little sense of not being as loving and supporting, but I can assure you that's the way it's going to be with your 4th graders.
So any other pros and cons?
Deb, can you turn on your mic, please?
Any other pros and cons?
Any other pieces of discussion for this? Jocelyn?
Recess, can you describe what recess is like now, and is it, I'm concerned that it's not what the elementary kids are used to. So
I think our model is going to be the same recess that they have now, albeit we'll have to probably move some equipment over and things like that. But we do a recess after lunch for all grades. A couple of years ago, we went to lunch, one lunch for each grade level, which was really effective. I know we've talked about maybe 4th and 5th together for lunch, which would be fine. When we went to single lunches, it was more time for kids to eat and relax. It was a little rushed when we did the 3 lunches. So I envision, a full recess that they have now and a full lunch.
Is there recess equipment currently?
There is, but probably not enough to meet the needs of the 4th grader, I would say.
Mrs. Pavo?
I have a question. Mrs. Egan, you mentioned, I think it was you who mentioned that we're in a budget crisis right now, so we really have to do what is necessary. But when we are no longer in a budget crisis, and I hope we do reach that point, and our enrollment climbs, grows, are we going to move our 4th grade teachers, students out of the middle school and back to an elementary school? I mean, I don't expect you to have an answer, but is this going to be a permanent situation? Is this going to be a temporary situation? Because the numbers will go up, and now we've settled into having the 4th grade at the middle school. I don't know.
So Elaine,
I don't know.
perhaps.
We can't be moving kids back and forth.
So perhaps a con for you would be that this situation may be temporary, if I could verbalize it?
Okay.
Yes, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
So the possibility could be, not next year, maybe the year after, we've had 4th graders move third graders moved to fourth grade at the middle school. Now they become fifth graders, and they're already accustomed to the middle school. Okay.
Okay.
So they would be there. Okay. Thank you.
And just to clarify a little bit too, I don't think anything we end up deciding could be said to be permanent forever. If there's one thing I've learned in life, right? We all do our best. And if something's not working, we make a change. And, you know, if we have to have this discussion every year, so be it. But looking at the issues that we face today, we need to make decisions based upon what we have in front of us today, understanding that we will be as flexible as we need to be moving forward in the interest of all the kids, really. You know, if something that we determine isn't working, let's hear about it and make a change. So.
Could I just ask, only because I know they're here, and I don't want to put you on the spot, so if you're not comfortable, were you at Portsmouth when they moved their fourth graders?
I was going to ask permission to speak.
Because I know you were at Portsmouth. I know Ms. Kraeger has experience with Middletown, and it would be valuable, and I understand it's just your opinion, to share your experience, because I know Portsmouth moved them up, moved them back, and they're still in Middletown.
So please allow me to say a few words about the Tiverton School Department as a newcomer to this district. Since my arrival at the Tiverton School Department, I have witnessed greatness as we prepare our staff with numerous professional developments and our students with an optimum education. And I have said this many, many times. Tiverton has been recognized as a district that continually is on the rise, and that is showcased as such through their academic achievements. At Fort Barton, I have found an educational community that has given me great pride to be their principal. Sadly, a budget deficit has brought us to tonight, where we are discussing possible reconfiguration options. My former district had to move grades 4 and 5 to their middle school. It was quite the task, and it came with some challenges. I do have to say, give students the tools, and they will learn. Give teachers the resources, and they will teach. In this process, it is imperative, and I've been hearing some of the pros here at the table tonight, and it is imperative that the physical space and layout is conducive to learning. Having classes next to one another, bathrooms nearby, flexible scheduling, and that can be very tricky when we talk about flexible scheduling. Traveling to specials, which they had to be accompanied by teachers, and these were in place when the Portsmouth made the move into the middle school. Portsmouth had quite a bit of issues when it came to the buses, because grades 4 through 8 were in the bus. And there was a lot of concerns from parents. And also, we did not have the greatest playground at that particular time, being it was a school of 6, 7, 8. So I've heard a lot of you say some things that I don't have to repeat, but I just ask all of us, all of you, let's do this right, please. Let's do this well. And just let's continue to be a district on the cutting edge. Thank you.
Sarah, do you mind just quick?
I will. When Middletown closed John F. Kennedy School, the fourth grade moving up to Gaudet Middle School was decided upon in that same sort of decision. So they closed JFK, and the fourth graders were moving to Gaudet Middle School. I think what made it successful, and that's still how it runs today, was as soon as that decision was made, Middletown created transition groups or work groups that met on a biweekly basis, where parents, community members, teachers, administrators, all stakeholders were part of decision-making. And the anxieties were heard, the fear was heard, the fear was listened to, and I think responded with not just one person making a decision, but a team making a decision, a community making a decision. If that is the direction that Tiverton goes, I would be advocating for a similar situation to make sure we have that work group in place. There was consistent communication, a question and answer fact sheet that was ongoing that parents and teachers had access to, and it really became a way for the community to come together. From a personal standpoint, my daughter was a third grader at JFK, and her school was the one who closed. So she was a fourth grader that first year at Gaudet. My son later was there a few years after that. I can only speak with my experience and my daughter's experience. Again, because we had so many answers going into the school year, it was successful. Students were part of those work groups, so my daughter was there talking about things that she felt she and her friends needed, and what the importance of the student voice. So I think that's something that we have talked about, that if it goes in that direction, that is the same sort of path we would take.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yes, Jocelyn.
We've had several parents reach out to us, and
we did.
Yes, some of the feedback that we got was questioning if fourth grade did go to the middle school, what's the difference between putting fourth grade at the middle school versus creating a learning academy as Gaudet has. So Gaudet Learning Academy is grades 4 and 5, and then the rest is the middle school. So separate principals, I believe, for the two.
Yeah.
Is that something you can speak to?
So that actually came out in that work group setting. It was just going to be a fourth grade separate hallway, very separate situation. But through that work group conversations, it was then decided to make it more of a fourth and fifth grade academy, kind of moving the fourth and fifth graders up together. A lot of them played sports together, so it really became more of a community, and they had more friendships as they moved up. So it did become a fourth, fifth grade academy. Eventually, they did have, they split up the principals. They started with a principal and assistant principal of 4 through 8. They changed it recently to have, to split that, so there's one principal for grades 4 and 5, Gaudet Learning Academy, and that is a separate school. It's a separate school with the State Department, and a principal for 6, 7, 8, but that did not happen right away.
Okay,
that just evolved.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
And then the other thing is that the kids did go on the bus. It was the same schedule, though in the same hours, but it was run on an elementary schedule for 4 and 5. They did go on the bus. The fourth graders were separate from 5th through 8, and a monitor did sit between 4th and 5th grade. I don't know if that's how it still is, but when we made that change, that's how it was.
Thank you. And other feedback that we got from a parent today, actually, which I thought was great, was, like you said, a transition group, not only for parents, but for students, and perhaps some insight from current middle school students that could be useful in the process. So more to think about if we were to move towards that.
Thank you.
Julie?
Just something quickly. So I did speak to my first grade team, getting some feedback from them, and one thing that was mentioned, when you say an elementary model, that would mean that those fourth graders would be walked to all of their classroom, their activities outside of the classroom. So they'd be walked to gym and picked up from it, music, art, just like we do in an elementary model. That is the case, right? Because that is part of our model. So they wouldn't be walking the hallways by themselves. They would be walked everywhere as they are at our level in the elementary school. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Egan? Oh,
I'm married now.
I'm sorry.
33 years.
Sorry, we all go way back.
So while I was listening, I thought of a possible pro for the fourth graders going to the middle school. Again, having taught fourth grade for 20 years, children were very nervous about going to the middle school. You know, like a lot of change, different building, changing classes, oh my God, the lockers, those types of things. This might ease the transition a bit, get them to the middle school, but with a classroom teacher, self-contained, with escorts all the way through the building, and then the next year moving to changing classrooms. So it might ease some nervousness. Just a thought.
That's a pro. Any other comments?
I just,
Oh, Ms.
Go ahead.
is it Brendan? Go ahead.
Pro or con? Who we got?
You,
I have concerns about the nurse and the main office handling an extra class of kids.
This is the one we're discussing.
For the middle school, yeah.
Nurse.
I mean, there's a lot.
if I'm not mistaken, in somebody who may have the contract open, Ms. Destramps.
I don't have it with me.
You don't have it with you?
I might know it off the top of my head.
Is it not that nurses can have no more than 600 students on their, in the building?
You have it?
We can look at that, but.
We can look it up. I think it's either 500 or,
But that's definitely something to consider.
oh yeah, most definitely. I know the nurse's office is very busy at the middle school.
Trying to think of a
Right now.
way to word that.
I can
So the
imagine.
nurse load, would that be load of the nurse?
Yep.
Okay.
In the main office.
Caseload for the nurse and the possibility of having to add.
And then I also was wondering about the contingency plan for the heat, like what happens if there's no heat in one of the schools? I know, it's just something.
I mean, that can happen now.
It was just easier when it was 3 schools and then everybody went and split up amongst the other 2 schools.
Okay.
It's just, and also, it was brought to my attention that on September 6th, 2024, there was an email sent out from the principal at the middle school about bullying and how the bullying should be handled at home. And people are concerned with that. They feel like that's a lackadaisy approach, especially with 4th graders and bullying. It was, something about allowing a natural process to unfold while they go through this developmental stage and they receive guidance and support at home.
Okay, so, thank you.
Is that a con? So I'm just trying to put, so a con would be your concern with 4th graders in a bullying environment?
If that was to happen, I mean, how would that be handled? Like, they're babies.
I have a pro for 4th grade going there.
Yes, ma'am.
Is we were talking about the piece of having all 1 grade together. That's a really important testing year. I taught with Ginny for 8 years at Ranger, and it would be, we do have PLCs now, and like I'm an EIL of a PLC, but you would have all of those 4th grade teachers together during that really important testing year to prepare, and there would be none of that, the Picassett scores and the Ranger scores and the Fort Barton scores, because now they would be all together. That is a pro, in my opinion. Yes, collaboration, and also none of that comparison of schools anymore.
And one team reporting.
One team. It's a team. Yes.
I have a question. Just a question. What would lunches look like for the 4th graders at TMS?
I just want to go back on that bullying thing, and I'll make it short and sweet. We don't tolerate bullying in the middle school. Period, end of story. In fact, if you look at the discipline, our first year we had almost 300 suspendable days. We have 13 right now, so clearly we're doing something right across the board there with our behavior and the respect to our teachers. And I'll go back to what I said earlier, our creed there really is that without building that relationship with children, deeper learning cannot occur. We talk about that all the time with our staff, and it starts with me. So I would never allow any child to be bullied, ever. And I spent 20 years all over the country speaking on that topic. It's near and dear to my heart. As for the lunch, can you ask that question again, Wendy? I'm sorry.
What would it look like?
What would it look like, the model? Like in elementary, they now have their 3 choices. They don't go up in the cafeteria and have choices like a restaurant.
Well, I haven't seen the elementary lunches, so I'm going to assume we probably, generally, middle schools have more choices. We've talked about, do we put 4th and 5th together? Because, and someone mentioned it earlier, we don't want to isolate them necessarily. We want them to be safe and supportive, but we also, they'll be, if they come, they will be part of our middle school community. So the lunches, I think there'll be a lot of choice. Whether they do it 4th and 5th, you know, we'll may come out in one of those focus groups, what we think is best for kids. But right now, in my mind, if they eat alone like our 5th grade does now, they eat as one group, 6th, 7th, and 8th. They have plenty of time to eat. There's time to go out. And I envision, as I said earlier, a longer recess for our 4th graders. They'd also have a snack. At some point, I think when I asked, I think the 4th grades eat later than even our 8th graders, so there'll be a snack somewhere in between, or maybe we shift it. They, haven't really got that deep in the details of the timing of things, but I like the idea of having that separate lunch because it gave our kids so much more time to get in. They didn't feel rushed, like the pre and COVID kind of days. So, thank you.
I'll add to that too, Wendy.
Mr. Andrade.
Thank you. I'm actively working with Chartwells along with the administration, so we are changing some things up. So that's perfect segue, yeah, for next year. So we'll be able to incorporate that as well.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Do you have another one you want to move on?
Ms. Kraeger?
Just one other, you were asking about pros and cons. I just have to say this again. The pro for C there is that our special education programs as established and IEPs as established would be able to be put into place with the staff that are in those programs as well. In addition to that, our speech, OT, and PT and calming areas would have a space.
So pro for you, I'm just trying to make sure I write it down, is that they're all together?
Is that our programs can be carried out as they are now in an appropriate classroom space.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Andrade.
All right. So Ms. Paquette was going to say what I exactly was going to bring up
Can
earlier.
you speak into a microphone, please?
So Ms. Paquette was going to bring up, we are aware of the nurse position at the middle school, and in our analysis, we would probably consider a nurse and a half, 1.5 FTE.
Okay.
So that would be,
Contract
I guess,
doesn't say a number of students for the nurse, but not less than 1 per school.
Okay.
so I guess put that as a con during a budget deficit.
Right, it's contrary to the goal of the budgeting improvement. Okay.
Can I ask Sarah a question?
Sure.
Yeah, so these options A and B, it looks like there isn't going to be any classrooms or special classrooms for special ed kids.
That's correct.
So A and B is not good for special ed, really?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to perhaps take up a couple of the new ideas that were brought up to us this evening? So that we can keep this moving. Ms. Del Deo, is she still with us?
So we have one on here. Do we want to discuss that, or is that not something that anybody even wants to consider? Move 8 up to the high school and 4 up to the middle school.
Well, if we were to go in that direction, that would be a natural extension of that conversation. Yes. Ms. Del Deo, I did not take notes on your specific.
I saw someone did. I saw them writing feverishly. I did all that while talking, giving a speech. I saw her write. I see everything.
Could you
Sure.
just tell us what the model was again?
So I guess the biggest thing was what you're doing with an extra, the Fort Barton space. I know it was, I know it's closed, but if you have to keep it open for the bond purposes, what are you using it for? So that's why I included it in another option. So one of the options would be to have pre-K and kindergarten there at Fort Barton. And you'd use that facility, obviously for 1 or 2 years, depending if you send your child to preschool. But speaking to your point, Mrs. Paquette, that you would have peers there because you'd have young students, and it would be early childhood centered. And it's a beautiful, lovely place to nurture that. And then, speaking to Mrs. Azevedo's point, where we don't want to move kids every single year, they would then go to the other 2 neighborhood schools, if you will, and they would be there for grades 1 through 4, and it would continue curriculum, testing, you name it.
So 1 through 4, I have Ranger Pocat, and
Yes.
then pre-KK Fort Barton.
Yeah, and I realize you're trying to save money by closing it, and I think that's why parents were asking about a cost analysis. And I think some of our concerns is if you're going to use the building as an educational place, like Mr. Arruda said, let's just do this well.
And I think to Hallie's excellent point, and I know that wasn't the point of tonight, and we'll need to do that, is once we have a few options, we're going to need to cost them out, because, I mean, I need to see what this looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I've already drawn it out, but I also have another option as well,
Okay.
if you want to hear.
So that would be Del Deo 1.
Oh,
Let's do Del
okay.
Deo 2.
Okay, great. So Del Deo 2 would be where you'd have the pre-K to grade 2 at the 2 neighborhood schools, and you'd put all 3 and 4 at Fort Barton. So I think Mrs. Azevedo said it again, so you could collaborate, work together, you'd all be together. And I think from what I'm hearing is that, and it's tough to say it, I'm just going to say it, and I know most of you, if you know me, you're going to hear that I just say that a lot, I'm just going to say it, that the number one question asked is how come one school performs here, and it really divides the community. And in order to bring everyone together, if they're all working together, because the parents are the same, the kids are the same, there isn't any better neighborhood of children. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? We're all the same, and I think that educators would like to feel that. I mean, I'm very happy that Mrs. Craven just got Principal of the Year, so I know she's not here, but I want to congratulate her too. I think anything that can bring our town together and be successful and be known for something positive, I think we should try and do. And if it keeps 4th graders out of the middle school, I think it's helpful to keep them all together and keep them as young as possible. And I just want you to know this has nothing to do with me. I actually, if I'm at Fort Barton teaching kindergarten still, I won't be with my little 1st grader going into 2nd grade. It's not like I'm thinking of myself. I just want you to all know that. I won't be with her driving to school every day. She's going to go somewhere else. So I'm not thinking. I'm giving up, and I'm thinking of the town. And I just hope that everyone else puts the time and effort and love into it for our students. So I really, really appreciate you listening to my choices.
Thank you.
So.
Mrs. Del Deo, can I ask you a question before you leave?
Yeah.
Oh,
yes, yes.
Okay. Before I wrote down grades 3 and 4 at Ranger. Is that what you meant, or no?
It wasn't what I meant, no.
Okay.
Just because I guess the
Fort
biggest...
Barton.
Yeah, just
Okay.
because, I'm going to say it again, the building needs to be talked about what you're planning on using it for. And if you're not planning on using it, then I don't know if we should talk the town council. I don't know the legalities of having a bond on it and not paying and trying to use it for something.
We are going to use it for something, we just haven't discussed what.
Right, so that's why there are options of it. I'm not trying to go against the other choices. I'm just trying to put it out there that, like, again, if we're going to do something, let's do it well, and that maybe we have to think outside the box, and a cost analysis might be helpful in that regard, so.
Yeah, exactly.
But we would love to be part of the process too, all of us, and I think I'm okay not being on the stage. I'm actually really okay being with the community, because I want you to know that even though the people are angry and upset, they really just want the best, and I know you feel the same way, and I have no problem connecting both. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you. So can we do pros, cons?
Sure.
So I have Del
For
Deo.
which of the two options?
I'm going to do Del Deo 1.
Elaine, you had 3 options.
Oh.
I have 2.
No, the third, there was, but the third was just keeping as is, because I was trying to say is if, and again, I'm not here to just try to keep the school open. I'm really trying to think, what are we doing money-wise and for our students? The third one is, if you were going to put a group of students and use it educationally, and you still have to hire all the people there to maintain it, then why are we even closing it?
So
is
before
all
we
I'm
go
trying to
any
say.
further,
We do have to.
Can I? So before we go any further, I think one topic we have not yet broached is, what is the administration's view of what we can do with the Fort Barton building? And still save money?
Right.
Because that really is the driving force here, is the budget. So if I could ask Dr. Sanchioni to kind of talk to that a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The most cost-effective use of Fort Barton is to put our 18 to 22-year-old program that is currently in Middletown. Those students really don't come to school. It's more of a check-in, and they're out in the community working. However, that program would qualify the school for housing aid. We've confirmed that. I believe I provided you with an email from Mario Carino that the school then would still be considered a school. It would keep the school open for potential growth down the line. But cost-effective, that was your question to me. The most cost-effective way would be to house that program there.
And does that program require a principal,
No.
a nurse?
No.
School lunch?
No.
Transportation?
No.
And obviously, there would be adults required,
The teachers that are currently in the program.
the teachers that currently already serve that program?
Correct. And we would move an administrator's office over there.
Okay, and I think you would also perhaps, to your point.
Transportation is required, but we would do that with the van that we have. The students, or the young adults, do not follow a regular school day. They really kind of follow a work day. So most jobs kind of open at 9 or 10 o'clock, so depending what the student's doing, they would be going to that job, but they would be transported there by our van, and then coming back to Fort Barton for some direct explicit instruction from the teacher and teacher assistants. That would be done with the van.
Okay, thank you. And, truly, it wouldn't be a full use of the building? There's how many students generally, ballpark?
We'd be starting with 6.
Okay, small number of students.
But it meets the requirements
It
of
would meet
RIDE
the
to keep it as a
requirements.
school building.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's an important thing to note here, is that if we were to go in that direction, it would be a very easy transition for the transition program, and that, it would allow us to continue to focus on the pre-K through 12 population separately. I just wanted to introduce that topic to this audience, because it had not come up before tonight.
2 questions. Who's driving the van? I'm sorry, I asked silly questions.
No, that's a good
It
question.
would be someone who has the right certification for that van. You know, we're still kind of creating that program, but we would have someone who has that, what is it called? You know, whatever the license is for that.
Okay, so you don't know at this time?
Yeah.
Also, you know, the transition program, they tend to have an apartment or a life skill area. How is that going to work? We're going to have to make a life skill area in that building.
Yep, exactly. So something like, for those of you who don't know, these are transition students who are working on life skills and vocational skills and self-advocacy, independent skills, daily living skills. So Mrs. Buckhead is speaking like, would there be opportunities for the students to perhaps use a washer and dryer? Would there be, we actually teach our young adults how to make different kind of recipes, make breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so they're more independent. So we would create that in one of the classrooms, open classrooms.
Thank you.
Hi. That transition program that you're speaking about, what would that look like as far as paraprofessionals?
It's what's outlined in the child's IEP. So all of those children in that program also have an IEP that outlines their specific services. So if a student's IEP has that they have access to a teacher assistant, then a teacher assistant would be there.
Would they be our teacher assistants or
That would
from
be
an
the plan.
outside agency?
Yep, that would be the plan.
Ours.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So currently, like Dr. Sanchioni said, we have students who attend a program in Middletown. We would be bringing them back to Tiverton and not purchasing that out-of-district placement tuition and bringing them back.
So
Okay,
that would
thank
be
you.
a pro, having our students
A
back. in
pro
our
to have our
district.
students in Tiverton and getting jobs in Tiverton is a pro.
And then the fact that it still meets the requirements of RIDE and,
We would do that for 6 students, and we would do that for 2 students. Every student is important to
Oh,
us. I just want to make that clear.
and it would still meet the requirements to get the
Housing.
cost share housing. Okay, thank you.
In my research, looking into special ed and transition programs and such, they say that a child, well, not a child, an adult that graduates high school should physically leave a school building and do that program so they feel as if they've graduated this point in their life, and now they're going into another point in their life. I hate to say this because, you know, it sounds like a great idea, but to go back into maybe their elementary school, maybe some of these students went to that elementary school, so it's kind of like taking a step back.
The research shows that you want to have the students out of the high school setting, so the students don't think it's just a continuation of what they've been doing in high school, and really see it as a separate new program for them. There are programs throughout the state who run in school. Middletown their program was at Gaudet Middle School for the majority of the time. I think they have moved now, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, to the YMCA.
So although they're not in it's really not being in the high school setting and creating a new environment.
Thank you.
Okay. To keep us on track as much as possible. So have we gone through the quote-unquote pros and cons of Mrs. Del Deo's number 1 recommendation, which was pre-K and K at Fort Barton?
1-4 Ranger.
1 through 4 split between Picasset and Ranger.
I'm not going to list this as a con, I'm going to list this as a concern. I'm not sure what the cost savings are. It was back the same when we were talking about that we would have to add a nurse in a couple of these instances. So I would need to see that costed out. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, we have a 1.6, 1.9 million that we need to cut. So I'd like to see a cost analysis because essentially we're keeping the building.
Thank you. Moving on to...
Diane, can I say something about that?
Oh, yes.
I have a pro about the 3-4 at Fort Barton.
Yep.
Going back to what Hallie said too, having all of one grade, all of two grades, all of grade 3 teachers together, all of grade 4 teachers together. That's great for teaching, supporting one another, collaboration. So that is a pro, I would think.
And those are 2 testing years, by the way.
3 and 4.
Very important testing.
And I'm going to add a pro as well. There's an opportunity for revenue if we were to pursue universal preschool and try and enroll not just students who may want to come for a half-day preschool, but all 4-year-olds into a preschool. There's an opportunity for revenue.
Amy, would that be either one, if we had pre-K through K or pre-K through 2, or do you see that more as the pre-K and K?
I'm sorry, I thought we were talking about her first proposal.
The pre-K
where pre-K
through
was in a
K.
building with space, and that would increase your enrollment and therefore your revenue.
Okay.
I'd be happy to work on that if that goes forward.
But that was that first one, right? Okay. And that's what was my question, is would that also be potential for the second one as well, or really when you just have those 2? Because one of them was, Amy, one of them was pre-K through K at Fort Barton. The second one was PK through 2, or I'm sorry, I'm wrong. That was Ranger and Picasset. I'm confusing you.
And I think it'd be less about the building, but having the opportunity for an early childhood center in any location would allow for increased enrollment and per pupil.
And that would
maybe
be
we would
at
then keep those children to increase enrollment down the road.
And that's pre-K?
Yes, we could have a universal pre-K. Many districts do that.
Okay.
And they charge the market rate. So
Okay.
it is also something you can charge for and get enrollment.
Can I ask, Amy, if you don't mind, or whoever wants to answer, is that something we could also have with the 1822 through 22 transition program, or would that be an issue, having all of those in the same building?
I think we would just have to look to see how that would be set up. You know, I think different entrances and things like that, although the transition kids would be out at jobs as well. So I just think we'd have to look at that.
Okay.
If that was an option.
I just want to add to that too, because Sarah and I did look into that with Amy's suggestion. Unfortunately, RIDE did decrease some aid for pre-K upcoming, so that was disappointing for the next school year.
Brandon, I can't hear you.
So RIDE did decrease their pre-K aid next school year, so 25 through 26, because that was something we looked into. Not so much what Amy was referring to, but a second layer of preschool.
And as just briefly, as Mrs. Azevedo mentioned, you know, many of our surrounding towns do have that. Barrington is a place that charges a lovely amount. Then the students can enroll in before and after care for an additional revenue stream. So there are definitely opportunities there we could explore together.
Okay. Yes, Kristen.
I think it's a good idea to set up all of the committees with the parents and the teachers and even the children. I think it's important to have their voice also. But I would also like to have those committees put in place sooner rather than later so that we can move our teachers where they need to be moved to. They're going to know what subjects they're going to be teaching next year, what grades. I think it would just be fair to everyone if we do it sooner rather than later.
So you want us to make a decision about what we're going to do sooner rather than later is what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me just add that to what Kristen said. I don't think people realize that this creates a great deal of angst for teachers as well. Many of us are going to move teaching things that we have not taught before or have not taught for very many years. And so the stress is building on the teachers. And I think once people are settled and know, okay, I'm going to teach 6th grade science next year, I can start preparing. And I think that that's really important just to make the teachers feel good too, because this is definitely an impact on teachers as well.
Thank you. We have one more that Mrs. Priestner had proposed earlier. And this one is definitely a little bit different than the rest. And her proposal is to close the middle school instead of closing Fort Barton and moving grades 6 through 8 into the high school. And move fifth down to the elementary schools. Did I get that right?
You did.
Okay. We can put it on the pros and cons list and talk about it. My number one con or concern here is the financial commitment that the town has made to the middle school by virtue of the raise the roof bonds in 2015, 16. We still have several years left to pay on those bonds as opposed to the couple of years we have left to pay on the Fort Barton bonds. So for me, that is a huge issue. And that would be a school, in that type of scenario, we would truly be abandoning a school. And that would require the bond to be paid back immediately, and that would take the town's reserves to really an unacceptable level. And even if they would not obliterate the reserves entirely, I don't know, I don't have the balances or the maturities in front of me, but for me at least, any discussion of closing the middle school at this time would not be a very wise idea for us to contemplate. Not to say that down the road that might not be, you know, as enrollments continue to change and as education continues to change, that perhaps that we would not look to retire a school building of either the middle school or the high school. But I think at this time that would be cost prohibitive. Anyone else have anything on that?
Jocelyn.
Just thinking about the program Sarah's speaking of, would there be the option of life skills at the middle school? And then the bond wouldn't be
Right.
a concern?
What I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why couldn't we just put the same programs we're thinking about putting at Fort Barton and put those at the middle school? It's possible.
Yeah, definitely that's possible. We could look at areas throughout the buildings to see what makes most sense, but again, having them out off campus of Tiverton High School would be most appropriate.
And I do think looking at that particular option would require more than one evening's discussion for sure. We don't have the high school represented here tonight, or the high school families either. So it's something that, you know, if we wanted to continue to look at this, that would be fine, but we would need to obviously continue these discussions at another meeting.
And if I can, a con for me.
You don't, microphone, Deb.
I'm sorry. A con for me is, and Amanda, I don't know if she's here, a parent sent a lot of information to us, and I spent a lot of time reading through it. K-8 model, I can see, that makes sense to me. The grades, we know a lot of districts around that use the K-8 model. Moving 6 and 8 up to the high school, that's not a model I've seen represented a lot. It's not a model I think I'm comfortable with. That's kind of the reason why I'm a little bit against the 8th going up. I mean, that really is it's a different educational structure once you get up to the high school. I like the idea of a LEAP program, though, if we could somehow expose our 8th graders to that. But if we were going to go to that model, for me, I think K-8 makes more sense than, but that's just based on the research that parent had sent me and that I read through.
Along those same lines, too, if we were to further discuss it, we would want more middle school parents as part of that conversation as well.
That's correct.
Let me just add to that and Ms. Destrams can confirm this, the 5th grade teachers, you'd be splitting your 5th grade teachers who are currently subject-centered, where kids change classes. If you're going to put them in 3 different schools, we're going to run into certification issues, teachers who can't teach certain disciplines, teachers who've never taught wit and wisdom, and certain things like that. So it's got a lot of consideration if it's going to be pursued.
Okay. I would like to, I think we've kind of exhausted the lists that are in front of us. And I would like to open up the floor to the members of the audience. I'm going to ask very politely that you all speak to the options that we have discussed this evening. Your opinions are welcome. Your ideas are welcome with respect to how any of these options could be implemented, accepted, rejected, whatever is your pleasure. But I will again ask that we all remain respectful and civil as we go through this exercise, and that you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes so that we can have time for everyone who wishes to speak. Thank you. And if you could identify yourself, please.
Hi, Corey Marchand, 24 Christina Drive. First, thank you for having this forum tonight. I appreciate that everyone's here and was able to share these options with us. I'll be honest, I was a little bit disappointed with the paper just because I like numbers. I like data. There really wasn't a lot here to look at. So while we talked through these options, I do think that a further analysis of the exact cost savings for each of these is super important. And without that, it's really hard to take this conversation any further. I just wanted to make a couple of comments about the middle school. I know that there have been some negative comments about the middle school. I just want to say that from my own perspective, I have 2 boys that are thriving there, and so I just want to share the other perspective as well. My kids come home, they're really happy, they love school, they love their friends, they're in 6th and 7th grade, and so, you know, there have been a couple of bumps in the road, as is expected in a middle school, but overall, I've had a positive experience. I think that what I would share is I work in a K-12 school on a K-12 campus. So I've got kindergartners all the way through high school right in the same place, and we make it work. So I think when you look at the third option, I think it's not just a commitment to keep them separate. It's a concerted effort in everything that you do to separate those kids. So I don't think a part-time nurse is the answer. I think a dedicated nurse to 4 and 5, a dedicated nurse to 6 through 8. The office spaces, the people who are working with those kids needs to be on the same level, on the same floor. It can't just be, oh, well, you know, we happen to send kids down and then they cross paths. It cannot happen. And so I live it. It works. I have 1st and 2nd graders, and above them are high school. Those doors are locked. They're key carded. No one goes up and down. Staircases are assigned to grade levels. Even for fire drills, I'm not going to have the older kids running over the big kids, right? Like, I assign exactly where they're going so there's no confusion. So this is not just, oh, we'll try to keep them separate as much as possible. It's a concerted effort on every front to make sure that they're not crossing paths. And that's going to be really hard to do. That's going to be adding doorways and hallways that kids normally walk through with no problem. And that is probably walking some of the older kids through when they're going to gym or music classes, when you're typically letting them go because they're older and you just let them go. You really wouldn't be able to do that with 4th and 5th grade separate in their own wing. I think that's the biggest piece of information that I want to share with you. Do I think that option C or 3, whatever it's called, is possible? I do, but I would just emphasize how important it would be to go through every single aspect of that day to make sure that it truly is separate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions that they wanted to ask Ms. Marchand? Okay. Thank you.
Hi, how are you? My name is Ray Forrest, 42 Mount Laurel Lane in Tiverton. I have a daughter that attends Fort Barton right now in 1st grade, and a son that would attend next year. So, I mean, since you are taking input, you know, from the audience, from the parents, et cetera, I would love to see a show of hands here. Who here is in favor of sending our 4th graders to the middle school? So, I mean, I think it should be noted that of all of your constituents, Nobody is in favor or interested in that option. And honestly, so you have two other options that you've presented the parents and town residents with. I think it's a little bit frustrating for most of the folks in the audience and others that couldn't attend. You have option B, which includes keeping Fort Barton open. And with whatever limited research or time that you've spent so far to come to this conclusion, where you announced publicly last week that you're going to be shutting down Fort Barton, but yet here you have an option that keeps it open. I think it's very frustrating and difficult to understand why you can't continue to search for an answer or an option that keeps it as is and intact, and to consider alternatives that keep Fort Barton in place as is with grades K through 4. So, I mean, could you take us through your thought, Diane, or your thought process as to why you haven't further considered keeping it intact as is?
We have been struggling as a school district with a structural deficit for a number of years. And we have managed to keep our current physical footprint in place through that time by using one-time funds from any number of sources, including COVID relief funding and indeed our own entire fund balance to keep this going. The fact of the matter is that when the elementary schools, the 3 of them, were renovated, rebuilt in the mid-2000 timeframe, and that bonds were taken out for that purpose, we had a lot more students than we do today. And I don't have my spreadsheet open in front of me, but I believe it was to the point of, it was 30% that we have lost in 20 years. 30% of our student base. And that loss has been spread pretty evenly amongst the grade levels from K through 12. It's you know, not just an elementary problem, not just a high school problem, it's throughout. And this has been an issue in pretty near every school district in our region, or at least school districts like this one who are not inner city. And we've heard from some of our administrators tonight, and we are aware of other situations as well, where a number of the regions near us, a number of the school districts near us, have also been forced to close schools. This is not, you know, something that is unique to Tiverton alone. It's, if anything, we are the last ones to have managed to hang on. It is becoming far less efficient than we need to be responsive to the taxpayers of Tiverton, to ask them to continue to fund these 5 schools. That is why the decision has been made. We talked about it at length in 2024. We began these discussions right away in 2025, as soon as we came back from Christmas break. It is clear to me, at least, that this is only one of several cost-cutting measures that we will have to face. But it is an important one.
So I would challenge one of your comments. I would challenge your comment that the taxpayers are not willing to keep the funding in place to keep the 5 schools intact and in place. So I'd put the question to the audience here. You know, who would be in favor of keeping Fort Barton in place as is? A show of hands, raise your hands. But to that point, you know, we all experienced last year, there was overwhelming support from the town to keep 5 schools intact, to keep Fort Barton in place as is. I've born and raised in Tiverton, attended plenty of town hall meetings, et cetera. I've never seen so much overwhelming support to keep Fort Barton intact and as is. So it's very hard for this community to honestly believe you, or to feel like you have our best interest in place when there was so much support for that. And then this is the option that you present to us unilaterally. You did it during school vacation week, which was...
No, I will correct you on that one. We did not do it.
Well, you did.
We did it the week before school vacation
so
at a
you-
regularly scheduled meeting, 2 weeks ago from tonight.
So it was very difficult, I think, for a lot of folks to see how the process unfolded. I think that, my understanding and in all the conversations that I have with other parents and town residents is that there is still overwhelming support to keep Fort Barton intact and in place as is. I would hope that the school committee can continue to look at options that keep Fort Barton in place, considering the performance of the school. I think the overwhelming support that has been shown for it last year and continuing now. I think you've started to wear Tiverton down a little bit. We still need to have this conversation and these debates with the school committee. And I think the town administration and town council worked generously with you last year so that we could keep Fort Barton open. And again, it's incredibly difficult and kind of disheartening to see that we're here again this year.
Thank you.
After last year. So anyhow, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, just from my perspective quickly, that no one wants to close the school, no one wanted to close the school, but when we met in the fall, our business manager presented to us a budget and said, you must cut, I think 1.8 million, 1.7 million at the time. You must cut. So the options we were given were consolidated school plus staff, because we're not done cutting, we're not even close. This is maybe, what, 600K? Consolidating schools, 500, 600, so we're not done. So we were given the option, consolidate schools and cut another, 8, 9 staff, or take it all from staff. And the staff we were told that we were going to lose were social and emotional support services, aides, our math and our reading specialists. So that was our choice. That was the choice that was presented to us by Mr. Andrade. So I understand your frustration, but we have to balance our budget, and we can only ask for, we also have cost increases. We have heat that goes up. We have transportation that goes up a lot. We have healthcare increases, so we're trying to balance the best way to serve 1,500 children and all of our teachers and do it in a way that we recognize everyone in the district and trying to do the best we can. And I understand a lot of you here don't agree, but we do hear from a lot of parents who think and do agree that please don't cut our specialists, please don't cut my child's math specialist, my child's speech path. I understand you have a choice, please don't. So this is where we are, is we do have to make choices, and we understand not everyone's gonna like them, and it really does, to think that, my child went to Fort Barton, to think that, any one of us don't care what we're doing, it's simply not true. We're trying to balance a budget. We can only ask for so much from the council unless they're willing to give us above and beyond the 4% that we need for cost increases, which, what do we need, Brendan, $1 million? 5? What's the number? Oh, you don't have to give it to me. But so we asked for 4% just to cover our cost increases, which led to this $1.8 million we have to cut. So if the council and the community want to say to us, we're going to give you your 4% and we're going to give you another $500K because we think it's that important to keep the schools open, I'll keep the schools open. But that's where we are, is we have to balance our budget. We have zero choice in balancing our budget. It's state law. And like I said, anybody to think that any one of us take pleasure in this or want to do this or somehow ran 12 years ago so that I could be here today to do this, it's just not true.
Madam Chair, can I speak?
Yes.
So years ago, when I was volunteering at Picasset and there were threats of level funding, that's when we started getting involved, starting attending budget committee meetings. We had an FTR at that time, and I didn't really quite understand it all. I just kind of thought, well, can't they give us the percentage that we need? However, state law says the most we can request is 4%. And so if that's the max that we can ask for, what's the actual percentage, Brendan, that we would need to fully fund things?
About 575, almost 6%.
And so given that, we can't ask for that, and we have to figure out the gap, and that's the struggle, that's the reality of where we're at with balancing a budget, is if we can only ask for 4, but really we need 5.75, we are in this place of an awful decision. Nobody wants to make this decision. I would never imagine that this would be happening, but I want those interventionists. I want SEL. We have 1,500 kids we have to think about, and I'm not comfortable with cutting that many positions. I just had to share that.
Can I add something also to this?
Yes.
Which a lot of people don't understand, is that the state cut our funding to this town last year. We were, I think, the lowest. We got the lowest funding in the state of Rhode Island due to our lack of enrollment. So is our enrollment up right now? So we're going to probably get a cut again. And we also have a political climate federally that we have to take into consideration as well. So we can go to the town and ask, as you say, the taxpayers to pay that 4% in addition to another $500,000. But we've been asking for years, and that's hard on our elderly population in this town with our enrollment down like this.
Just want to, Madam Chair, just make a clarification. Based on the options that were presented, you're seeking the number's higher than 500,000 to keep Fort Barton open. I'm looking at 700,000 to 1 million. 700,000 to 1 million. It's a lot greater depending on what option above the 4. Just for clarity.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Ms. Riley?
Are
you ready?
Real quick.
Oh, go ahead,
Yeah.
sorry.
The number was 700,000 to 1 million by consolidating the elementary schools, not 500,000.
In addition to the 4%.
In addition to the 4%?
Yes.
And what measures would have to be taken to get that? I mean, there's no...
Depends what option you choose, but basically by consolidating, you're looking at almost 11 positions through the consolidation of savings.
No, I'm sorry. What I'm asking is, yes, legally, how do you get above 4%?
So,
Ben can answer that.
yep. Ben, you want to address that one?
What is the question?
So the question is, legally, how do you request above the 4%? That's state law, correct?
Well, yeah, the most we can ask for is a 4% increase. We could indicate to the town council that we require more money. But given the history of the increases that this town has granted, it's extremely unlikely that that's going to happen because they also have to manage their side of the budget, and there aren't sufficient resources at this point to cover that kind of gap without their substantially reducing their services.
Just one more supplemental question to that. I was watching a school committee meeting from, I think it was 2015, in which we were concerned about upcoming budget fiscal years. And someone on the committee at that time, who's no longer on the committee, mentioned something about a waiver. Can you explain that a little bit?
It's not applicable.
It's not applicable,
to our
okay.
circumstance. The town, if it had resources, can give the resources to us. They would have to request a waiver if they had to go over their cap in terms of how much revenue they could increase. Thank you. You're welcome.
Also, I'd like to add something else, and it is the elephant in the room. There is casino money, and nobody really knows what the revenue is. And it's very well protected because there was a referendum last year, which the towns, and I'm just giving facts. I'm not stating an opinion here, but there was a referendum last year that our town council, and I may present this incorrectly, but oversees that revenue and oversees our budget as well. And we're the only town in Rhode Island that has this right now. So we don't know what the revenue is from the casino. That's kind of something that maybe we should be looking into. Just a thought.
Okay, before we go any further, I would like to get back to the audience questions because we are straying a little bit off the consolidation discussion. I really do want to keep it to the consolidation discussion, so please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I just had a couple of points to touch upon that were brought up here tonight. One of the things to kind of piggyback off of what Ray had mentioned was there was this promise last year that was made, and I sat up here as I ran for school committee with some of you, and there was this commitment that was made to collaborate and to be transparent. And it's extremely disheartening, and I know I speak for myself and for many others who were blindsided by this decision that popped up at a school committee meeting when 2 members weren't even informed and were absent at the time. Most parents were traveling with kids or sick at home with kids, so couldn't attend. And it was not clear. And to Ray's point, if option B was going to be brought up about maintaining Fort Barton for, pre-K or what have you, or special, what did you call it, learning academy, then why take a vote to close it before school vacation and so abruptly? And why not have this discussion? Why not talk to the town council? Deb, you mentioned the funding that the town, increasing funding. I don't think that's an option. I don't think we can we can't ask our taxpayers to bend over backwards to support these schools anymore. I think we need to dig deeper. We're losing students, that's true, but there's just about 800 students in Tiverton who are unspoken for, who don't attend school here. Why aren't we tapping into that? I think there's a fear, there's a lack of trust in Tiverton for our leadership, and it's because of this lack of transparency. We want to work with you. I appreciate, I have so many notes that I took tonight. I appreciate all the ideas that these teachers and staff members brought to us. I think it's so helpful. I think some of my favorites were, I think it was Elaine said, option 2 with, was it pre-K through 2? I think, Ranger and Picasso. There's just so many options. So I just feel like we could have done so much more before jumping the gun to take a vote to close a school when no one was here.
Well,
it just seemed like we were blindsided.
Okay. So again, and I've already explained this once this evening, and I'll say it again. We have had continuous discussion on this topic. We have had, when we made the decision last June to go ahead and keep it open another year, we even had a member who's no longer with us saying, who knows, we will be very much revisiting this same topic next year. None of us were under any illusions that making the decision that day was going to be a permanent decision. Secondly, when, just after the election came place and we had our first meetings to start budget discussions this year, early January, we've had this on our docket every meeting. We have had multiple discussions on tape, out in the open. We've had very little participation from anyone until we made this announcement. I won't speak to the vote we took 2 weeks ago. Our members were here, not here, matters not. They were aware we were going to take that vote, and we went ahead and did so. We need to, one of the issues we ran into last year, and before I go there, we cannot expect the taxpayers of Tiverton to continue to fund a school system that has so much capacity that it makes no sense to operate 5 buildings. I'm just going to put it out there. We can't. We have to look at our costs and contain those costs.
And I think
that is what we need to do.
I think I would definitely agree with you that it's unfair to ask the taxpayers to do that.
Absolutely.
So I don't think anyone thinks that that's the case. I think what we're looking for is numbers. If you're going to sit up there and take a vote, an abrupt on such a monumental change in this town, you can't really do so without explaining exactly how much is expected to be saved. And like Corey mentioned, when you list these options, it's kind of useless to us because two of them, you're keeping the building open. So to us, it's just it doesn't make it. It seems senseless.
Thank you. Thank you. Are we all set?
Well, that's my question.
Thank you.
So I guess my question is, when can we expect to see real numbers on how much is going to actually be saved?
At the beginning of tonight's meeting, just to bring us all kind of back full circle, and I don't know if we'll be successful or not, and very clearly, we've had a couple of new options put on the table that we discussed. It had been my hope that this evening that we could collaboratively whittle down these numerous options to perhaps a couple that we can now in turn ask our administrator, our finance director, our superintendent, our principals to give us a much deeper level of detail with respect to the costs and exactly how these configurations would work. That had been my hope that this evening we could come to that so that we can say, okay, this option's not going to work, take it off the
totally
table.
understood. I guess my point is why take the vote in the first place to close it if you haven't even gotten that far? Why not have the discussion, consult the town, get some ideas? This is what we had discussed in the past. We knew there was an issue, but everyone's willing to help. So why not go through, discuss the options, like you said, pull down 2, and then decide, is this in our best interest? Instead of these scare tactics, because that's what it's been. I mean, we're a nervous wreck. Our kids are a nervous wreck. I mean, I don't want to be here tonight. My kids don't want to be here tonight, but I have no other choice. And Diane, you mentioned, you would do this year after year if you had to save costs. We don't want to do this year after year. We want to fix our school system. We want it to work right. We want to gain back some of those 800 students in this town that are afraid to come here because they don't trust this leadership.
Well, I would respectfully disagree with that characterization, but thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Good evening. Denise Miller, 47 Tanglewood Drive.
I'm sorry, one moment, please.
I just said with pros, cons on the options. Are we still?
We're still with the public input. Thank you. Please proceed.
I really appreciate all the teachers' input. As a parent, I feel a lot more comfortable in seeing the options that are presented and, in my mind, coming up with what I would agree would be the best option. But to piggyback on what Jordan said, we've been discussing this for a year, more than a year, and we still have not been told what's the savings to close Fort Barton? There's no number. No number has ever been given to the public and to the taxpayers. And that's what's so frustrating. I think a lot of people would be more supportive of the decision if the number was already established. We close this school, we're gonna save this much money. It'll take us this long to close the budget, to close the gap, to save that money, to turn around and reopen the schools so that way we can have that 3 neighborhood school model. It's never been said. And that's what's so frustrating. There's no transparency. Nobody trusts the committee. Nobody trusts the administration.
Respectfully, it has been said.
No, it hasn't.
Brendan, our Director of Finance, spoke to the budget cuts that we needed to make, and he estimated the savings under 2 options: closing and consolidating a school, and if we did not. So I understand.
But Deb, before he was even up there,
I understand
before
that you might
previous
not
to
have
that, the
been-
number has never been said, and that's all I want to say.
No, and again, I understand your frustration, but we have discussed the numbers. We're not tonight because the whole point.
We've been here last year at this time frame. The number was never given. Parents would be more on board if you'd be more transparent. Give us the number. Tell us, as a taxpayer, this is what you're going to save if we close the school. That's what we want to know.
Thank you. Mr. Perry, if you'd like to speak, come on up.
Hi, Christina Malloy, East Road. So I first want to just say that I can say that last year at this time, or it may have even been later, that we did see numbers at a school committee meeting, because that was my first school committee meeting that I had attended, because I am a parent of a Fort Barton student. As a parent of a Fort Barton student, last year when everybody was asking me, do you think Fort Barton's going to close? Do you think? I'd say, we got 1 more year. I knew that the vote was coming, and I knew that you were going to close the school. Anybody that says that they didn't think that was going to happen is I just don't have words for that. But what I do want to say is I think the most logical one, and I think the one that we should be looking at most, is the one that Mrs. Del Deo came up with. The one with the first grade and the pre-K being at Fort Barton. Brendan, you said that it's the state cut that funding for what they're offering for pre-K, but it's still revenue that's being brought into the school. Amy, you mentioned Barrington charges premium rates. I'll tell you, it cost me $600 a week to send my daughter to pre-K. That's revenue that we could be bringing to our town. I think that is an option that should be explored much more than adding the 4th grade to the middle school, or the other 2 options that keeps Fort Barton open but not in the capacity that it should be at. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Hi, Beth Hayter, 153 Hancock Street, Tiverton. I also agree that if you have to keep Fort Barton open to keep your bonding, that if you do pre-K and K, because you can bring a revenue stream in. I teach. I've been doing it for 26 years. I understand. We live by unfunded mandates. We have state law. Things change. Cuts happen. So we're just going to be in this situation year after year after year with all the changes at the federal level with the DOE. We don't know what funding's coming. We don't know. You never know. So if you don't have a way to make revenue, you're not going to be able to close this gap. And by having the pre-K as a paid pre-K, you might retain those kids. They might say, yeah, I'm going to stay for K, and then you'll continue to get kids in. Also thinking ahead, you have the housing developments that are coming. There will be more children in the town. We don't know how many, we don't know how many would go out, but I think it's really important that we build a revenue stream that's pretty consistent. Now, will it be a revenue stream right away next year? No, because you're going to need to build that program. So that you probably would need to ask for additional funds, at least for the first year. But if they know that we have a way to get revenue, it would make it a little more palatable to the taxpayer and to the town council, I think. I also think by pulling the adult education out of Portsmouth and putting it at Fort Barton as well, because that's out-of-district placement money. And you never know what out-of-district placement money is going to be. They could raise that tuition tomorrow. So I think those are two ways, because we need the revenue. Thank you.
Mr. Perry?
Dave Perry, Bramble Way. I promised my wife I was not going to speak tonight.
Come on.
You forced me to. I promised my wife I was not going to speak tonight, and you forced me to.
Thank you. I'll be honest with you, this new speaker system, I understand, is working well for the audience.
And I just have two
Not
questions.
so well for us.
Brandon,
Go ahead, sir.
did you say that closing Fort Barton was going to save $700,000?
Say the number again, Dave. What was the number you said?
$700,000 closing Fort Barton.
Yeah,
Did you
so-
say that?
Correct. It's not a savings. You also, it's the option.
You stand corrected, Ms. Polish.
Well,
He's not going to save $700,000 by closing Fort Barton. I want the numbers of savings that you people are going to save by closing Fort Bartons. I want detailed numbers that you're going to have by closing Fort Bartons. Not only me, Deb, I got the speaker.
But no,
I've got the
Mr.
floor.
Perry,
I
Mr.
want
Andre was
detailed
trying to
numbers,
explain,
and
and
so
you...
do all these people. We deserve them as taxpayers. We want detailed numbers of what you're going to save by closing Fort Barton. That's number one. My second question, that young lady over there, and I'm sorry I don't know your name, you spoke about the casino, correct? And that the money, you don't know where the money is? Brendan, how much money has the town council, and Ms. Polish, you know? You know? Peter, you know? How much money has the town council given you people over the last 3 years from the casino money?
Off the top of my head, probably 3 million.
How many?
Probably.
How much?
Probably 3 million or more off the top of my head.
$3 million, young lady. Now you know what you got? $3 million. Thank you.
So Dave, just,
And, and I just want to, and we've said this a lot, that we do, you know, all that 3 million is spent on capital improvements. It's
Correct, which does not come out of your budget. And we did that.
And we've seen great things from
Correct.
that money, and I
So
think
don't
we-
say you don't get any money from the town council. 'cause
Well,
you
I
get
don't
$3
think
million.
anyone said that,
No,
but.
This young lady didn't know where the casino money was.
Excuse
It's
me.
not sitting at the town council. It's
Mr.
coming to
Perry?
the schools.
That wasn't my question, and I do understand that we have received money from the casino, and I have appreciated that.
Thank you.
What my question was, is I don't know what the revenue is currently from the casino, and I just said I might be misspeaking,
The money sits at
and
the
I
town
didn't know.
council, and the school committee has to come to us and ask for the money.
Well,
And every
not-
year,
not
they
what
get,
we've
every
got.
year, they
Right.
get about $1 million. Correct,
Yes.
Brendan?
So
Correct?
3 years.
About $1 million, Peter?
what is it?
About $1 million?
What was the question before?
What was the question?
How much money you get from the casino every year?
Every year? Well, it's varied. You've been generous some years, and some years it's been a little less, but we gave you a number about 3 million over the last 5 years.
Okay,
It's been
thank you.
very helpful. We appreciate it, very
Thank you.
grateful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Brendan, could you explain the 700, because he
Yeah,
is
so this
right.
is-
I
this-
misunderstood.
Yeah, so this is a consolidation savings. So by consolidating the elementary schools, you're going from, say, there might be a grade, second grade, that's going from 6 classes to 5. So you have one less teacher. That's a savings, you know? What is it?
Yeah,
So
Ms.
when
Paus, may
we're-
I?
Yeah, because my understanding.
There's no savings here. We are going to cut $1.8 million out of our budget next year. It's just which people are going to lose their jobs. That's the only
Well, and that's
determination.
what I guess I was trying to point out, is then when we met in November and December, you gave us 2 options. We had to cut 1.8 million, and those were the options we were given, is staff plus consolidation to balance our budget, or a whole bunch more staff
Without
without
consolidation.
consolidation.
Yeah, Exactly.
Okay, so I'm correct in
We went
saying
through
that.
those numbers in
Okay.
detail.
So by consolidating, you're it's 12 staff members. And then you're basically, on the flip side, you're saving specialists. There's
So
other
you're
teachers.
saving 12 specialists by
Not
consolidating?
12 specialists.
Yeah, not just specialists.
Well, 12
SEL.
staff.
SEL, specialists, social workers,
Okay,
et cetera.
and
which
that
we
was my
went over a couple
understanding
meetings ago.
from back in October and November.
Correct.
So I'm correct? Okay.
You are correct.
So then the question was, above and beyond the 4%, what would we need to keep the school open? So,
You need almost 6%, whatever that number is.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so before we go any further, I am going to limit people to one shot at this evening, and you've both had a shot already. I want to give other people in the audience an opportunity, and I also want this meeting to end before midnight. So if there are any people who wish to contribute to the conversation right now who have not yet been a part of this. No, not really.
We have an exec.
I'll try to make it very brief, I promise.
And then Mrs. Riley will want the same treatment, so I'm going to have to say, no, thank you. Mrs. Riley, I am, again, you've had more than your 3 minutes.
Okay, so I just had, based
Oh,
on
my goodness.
Mrs. Del Deo's idea, I just had something to add to that.
So
that thought would be-
I understand that, but you've had your opportunity, and I want to give other people the chance.
Okay, nobody
Thank
stood
you.
up. I would have been
Thank
finished
you.
if you let me say it.
Does anyone else wish to come up? Okay.
Kelsey Scanlon, 175 North Brayton. My only point is, I think it was B to, I don't have the paper with me, to bring up fourth grade to the middle school. As a mom, my fifth grader has classes that are upstairs with eighth graders and seventh graders. Nothing against them, but in bathrooms, if she's going to the bathroom in a class, like in that hallway, she ends up in the bathroom with eighth graders or seventh graders who are throwing toilet paper over. It's been handled by Mr. Zatoli. But sending a fourth grader, if they have library or art or music upstairs, where are they going? Who's walking them to the bathroom if an eighth grader or seventh grader or whoever is up in that bathroom? I just want to make sure that our kids are, I get they're safe and everything, but if you're not in the bathroom with them or an aide standing outside, I just want to make sure that they're safe.
No, that's a great question. Didn't you guys
That's
say?
a great question, and I was going to interject that earlier. We'd be following the same model that they have now, where they're transported everywhere they go.
Yeah, but my daughter in fifth grade, she has classes that are upstairs, and if she needs to use the bathroom, she's going to that seventh or eighth grade bathroom, and nobody's in there with her to make sure that nothing is going on. Like I said, I'm not saying anything bad about eighth graders or seventh graders, but they're a little more advanced than my fifth grader.
Yeah, I think with fourth grade, they will, as
There'll be like
things,
a
as things
teacher's
go along,
aide.
we'll take a much harder line about absolute designated stairways, designated bathrooms. I know middle school, as I said earlier, it's not necessarily everyone's favorite time of life by any stretch. These words were never said, can I go back to middle school? But we have a lot of fantastic, beautiful children there. So, and I understand your worry. I'm not here to, but as I said before, obviously we're in a tough budget place.
Yeah, I just want it to
And-
be kept in mind when you are making the decision, that's all.
Without a doubt. Thank you.
If I just understand your question too, like, I believe it was Mrs. Simmons that said earlier, kids would be escorted to different classrooms or their specials, but I think what this parent might be saying is, okay, they were escorted to their special, but now they're up in that special. Who's going to make sure they're okay if they have to leave that classroom to use the restroom? Am I correct? Okay.
Right down the stairs to the bathroom.
Oh,
Yeah.
We're all set. We're all set. I thought they had something, but we're good, Diane.
Okay. Are there any new speakers that would like to opine at this point? Okay. So, Mr. Forrest, I've been very clear. I would like now to ask my colleagues on the school committee about how they feel we should proceed with respect to next steps. Again, my plan this evening was for us to perhaps whittle this down to a couple of stronger options and ask for definitely more detail from our administrators for further discussion a week from today. Do you all feel that we are ready to whittle this down, or would you like some additional time to give it some thought? I'm open to ideas from members of the school committee at this time.
Diane?
Yep.
I think there's some that we could possibly take off the list tonight, but I do think we need more information.
Okay. Mrs. Pavo?
I think we should take more time. Maybe next meeting. Sorry. And I think that there is something that can come off the list tonight, but it's almost 10 o'clock in the evening, and good decisions are not made after 10 o'clock, I'm afraid. I'm sorry, but are we rushing? We're going to rush?
And I don't want to rush.
And I don't
want
wanna rush
to approach
either.
it the right way.
All those people that are sitting in that audience have worries or concerns, and I think they deserve more than us rushing to try to solve some of the problems. I think it's too late to make a decision, or maybe we could cut something.
Okay.
But I'm not willing to do more than that.
I have always felt that Fort Barton should remain open.
Well, and that's understood, but with respect to these options, are you prepared to perhaps whittle it down?
No.
Okay, Ms. Polish?
Might I perhaps recommend, I think we can whittle a couple down, but I certainly would try to capture as best I can the pros and cons for the ones that we leave. And then perhaps we can ask for some cost data, but I think we are going to need some more time on the 4th. But could we whittle down a couple?
I think.
Like, I really don't like the whole PK1, like what some of the first ones. But I don't know what people think. I can certainly write pros and cons up the best I can for all of them. Or, I don't know. What are you thinking, guys? Can we whittle some of them down?
Are there any that we feel should definitely be taken off the table?
I think listening to the educators, it doesn't sound like option A is possible. Space-wise, we don't want to do music or art on a cart.
So anything pre-K through 4 is what you're saying? Sounds like it's off the table, it's just not going to work. A? Yeah.
Okay.
And then,
Perhaps, Deb, hang on a second. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Valley Cafaro, 381 Bulk Marsh Road. So another option would be pre-K through 2 at Ranger and Pecasset, and have 3, 4, and 5 at Fort Barton, keeping 6, 7, and 8 at the middle school, and also bringing in those 18 to 22-year-old group kids, the 6 kids at the middle school, if you guys can keep them separate, and then keep in the high school the way it is.
Thank you. I will say that at this time, we have voted to move the students out of Fort Barton. And, you know, whether, I understand that probably nobody in this room will agree with me on that decision, but that decision has been made. I would like to also move forward with decisions that work for our entire school district. Having a number of configurations that continue to use Fort Barton as primarily an educational facility that requires support services for children is really contrary to what we're looking at for consolidation here. That's my opinion.
But you just accepted.
Excuse me, sir, you know what?
You just accepted, you are accepting options, and I'm speaking on behalf of this lady here. So
You are out of order, sir.
You just accepted an option from Miss Daldea.
But
So
again,
you're contradicting yourself.
I
You
have
did
heard her option. Does anyone wish to explain, to discuss that option further?
This was also bringing back those other students from the higher age group that you wanted to
I'm
bring
sorry, I
back.
can't hear you.
You were talking about wanting to bring back the higher age group kids back to our town from out of town. This also included that idea that was newly presented to us that we're trying to configure into that as another option too, while still bringing fifth grade back down to an elementary level, which is more reasonable
But
for them.
again, with our budget situation, that is the primary driver for this discussion. I
So
mean,
none
I
of this
wish
should be
this
voted on until you give
discussion
us
was
numbers then,
about,
because you can't choose anything without a number.
you know, I really do wish that we could have a discussion about, oh, how best to stir this soup to come out with the absolute best education in the 5 buildings we have. We don't have that luxury at this time. And sir, I'm gonna ask you.
I apologize, but there's one option that we haven't heard about, and I think it's a very fair, legitimate option that many people want to understand and know more about. And that is the option of cutting some of the specialist positions. So we would like, and I am a recipient, my son is a recipient of these services, so we would like to understand if cutting specialist services.
So you feel that cutting the specialists for all of the children in our district that use those specialists
Of which my son is one of
in
them.
all of our schools
Of which my son is one of them.
going to be more important than
So-
keeping your children in Fort Barton.
Well,
Is that?
what I would like to understand is, what is the percentage of the student population that is served by those specialists? So, Brendan, well, I think it does matter. I think it does matter. So, I mean, Brendan, do you happen to know that offhand?
But
Is that
in all due respect, we did have a motion and a vote to consolidate the schools, and unless somebody is going to
Right. I think the point is.
Unless somebody
But
is going to reconsider that motion on this board, we really do need to move on to Ms. Destrup's point.
We do.
And our teachers here, people are anxious, we need to make a decision, and we're trying to do that.
Thank you.
Made the decision. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
So did you consider
I'm
that
going
option?
to shut off public comment at this time. We do need to move on, okay? So do the board members, excuse me, I'm going to ask,
Yeah.
Yeah, but if we're gonna allow her, we're gonna have to allow everyone. I know, but.
The teachers speak.
the members of the board wish for me to allow you to speak. You will be, in very full candor, the last public speaker.
Okay, thank you, I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Andrea McCormick, I'm a third grade teacher at Pecasset. I've taught in Tiverton for 28 years. I was a special education teacher for about 15 years prior to teaching third grade for the last 13. With this proposal of closing Fort Barton, I think your job is to be the most fiscally responsible that you can for the taxpayers of Tiverton. Within those parameters, I actually think the idea of having third and fourth grade at Pecasset with pre-K being able to be housed there, it would keep all of the specialists there in their classrooms as well, with the number of classrooms that we have, as well as special educators. If class sizes are down to 5 classes per grade level, and that K-2 would be housed at Ranger. Within that, I think the benefits would be 3 and 4 being in one building, being 2 tested grade levels. There's a lot of value when you have that continuation between those 2 grades. So that would be option I'd like you to consider and to look at. Thank you. I appreciate you giving me the time.
So
Thank you. Thank you.
pre-K 3-4 Pecasset, 1-2 Ranger?
K to 2 at Ranger.
Oh, K through 2, sorry. Which was actually, Diane, wasn't that one of your, it was C based on grade level?
It was one
Yeah.
that I threw out there.
Exactly.
And Pecasset has a larger gymnasium for the older kids,
Well, it
too.
wasn't C.
Would might be a benefit, too.
So again, what's the pleasure of the committee? Are we going to be able to whittle things down this evening and ask our administrators to come back with more details? I think,
So I think we heard just splitting pre-K through 4 and K through 4, it just isn't going to work. It's going to just too much, too many. But we have pre-K 3-4 Pecasset, K2 Ranger, which was one of the based on grade level ones. And then we have pre-K 3 based on geography and grade 4 up at the middle school. Those seems to be the two that we had. Do we have other ones? I think,
would it make sense?
yeah.
Given
I think we
the
need
late
to-
hour?
I think we need to write all this up.
Why don't we ask you, if you don't mind, write that up, and we'll take this up again next week.
Now, whoops, I will say, and what is the committee's pleasure, we do one of these options, at least one of them, includes having pre-K and K at Fort Barton. So do we, would that be in, I guess, because we know we have to use it as something, I'm going to include the pros and cons on that one? Does everybody agree? Okay, thank you. That would be Del Deo 1. I'm sorry, Elaine, I don't know how else to explain them. Okay. Yeah, let's do that, Diane.
I think that's probably for the best. We have, we started with a handful, we've actually increased the list, so let's get the documentation in place and kick off from there on our next discussion. Anything else from members of the committee? I do want to thank our guests this evening, both our public guests as well as our Tiverton School District employees, several of whom are in the audience, several of whom we have at our table who have participated in this discussion. It was absolutely something that was a big ask of all of you, and I appreciate it so much for you coming in. And I also want to thank all of our administrators for participating earnestly this evening. I think a lot of good ideas did come up, and look forward to additional discussions. Ms. Priestner, we're finished with public. Certainly. Del Deo 1 was pre-K and K at Fort Barton, and 1 to 4 split between Ranger and Pecasset.
With the pre-K being expanded to universal pre-K as a potential revenue stream.
Yeah. Okay. All righty. Under new business, we're going to table this item until after executive session. Announcements, again, as I've referenced, we will be meeting one night from tonight, March 4th, and then our next meeting will be on March 18th, which is a little bit different from our normal cadence. Now we will move to go into executive session. Any individuals that are being discussed in executive session have been given advance notice and an opportunity to have that discussion in open session. So if I could have a motion to enter executive session under Rhode Island General Law 42465A1, teacher non-renewal recommendations, 42465A2, discuss legal advice on lawsuit filed by regional employee, 42465A2, legal advice on maintenance of effort, and 42465A2, legal advice, possible litigation, Tiverton Town Council objection to superintendent search consultant expense. Do I have a motion?
Make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Can I ask you a question?
Second.
Is it related to this motion?
That motion, no.
Then let's have it after.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes or no?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Pickle. Mrs. Sherman, roll call.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. We are in executive session.